Okay, welcome everybody. October 12th, pre-public hearing work session of the Penfield Planning Board. Allison, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hetzke.
Here.
Bastian.
Here.
Knauer.
Here.
Tidings.
Here.
Burton.
Here.
Sangster.
Here.
O'Connor.
Here.
Weissar.
Here.
Okay.
We have meeting minutes from September 26th were provided in your drop.
Yes, hopefully everyone had a chance to review them.
Good.
Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have Burton and Tidings.
He's on his toes.
Hetzke.
I'll abstain.
Bastian.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Knauer.
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, on to table applications. Our first application, Bayview Landing. We still have no new information to review. If the board's interested in just not taking any further action on that.
No action. Okay.
Okay. Second one is Glendivere's. The town engineer will be submitting a letter to the town board, submitting a letter with the town board's findings prior to the meeting regarding the work within the right-of-way. The town board ruled that they will install gravel parking spaces in the right-of-way for access to the trailhead located to the east, or to the west of the site. The applicant will be revising their site plans and we hope to be receiving those soon.
Okay.
So this time,
Make the motion.
continue table?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay.
Tidings and Knauer.
Hetzke.
Aye.
Bastian.
Aye.
And Burton, are you abstaining?
Abstaining.
Okay, thank you. Knauer.
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
All right, third table application is 2775.
Or recuse. Yeah.
abstaining
2775.
from voting and choosing myself from it.
Make it clear. 2775 Penfield Road's the third one. At this time, we don't have anything new. We're still waiting for revised engineer site plan.
Make a motion to continue the table.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Hetzke.
Aye.
Bastian.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Knauer.
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
We have a miscellaneous item?
Okay, so the first miscellaneous item's on hold. We got a re-subdivision map for two properties. At this time, they're currently reviewing it. It crosses school district boundary lines. So until the school districts are able to work out whether they're interested in switching the boundaries to include the new section of parcel, they're holding that, but we just found that out very recently.
This
Last-
is the
Westfield Commons in 82. So 43 Westfield Commons is interested in taking a portion of 82 Maryville Lane that across school district lines.
Okay.
So that's currently on hold. Next one is just November 9th meeting update. At this time, we have no applications. Nobody made it in time, so no meeting.
Oh, no, we're doing
Or
work session.
work session, sorry, work session. We're canceling
public
the
hearing.
hearing, but we'll be having a work session at the regular time at 6:30 p.m.
Okay.
That's official.
Do we have anything else
Not at this time.
prior to the public hearing?
Nope.
That was fast. I guess we will recess until 7 p.m. where we will reconvene up at the dais for the public hearing. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 12th, 2017 meeting of the Penfield Planning Board. We will begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thanks everybody for coming. We have a pretty busy agenda tonight. We have 5 items on our agenda, one of which is a sketch plan. And the sketch plan, for those of you who are not familiar with the process here in town, sketch plan is an informal review of an idea or concept that an applicant may have for a project. It's not an official application. Typically what happens is they present their idea. There's not a lot of detail, not a lot of engineering detail in the sketch plan. The planning board takes a look at it. We invite the public up for comments, and then after the fact, we will issue a letter to the applicant giving our opinions on the project, and they may or may not return with an actual application after that. The way we conduct our meetings, our public hearings, the applicant will present their project, the board will ask questions, then we'll open up for public comment. Please, when I call your name, or I think there's some sign-up sheets on the table back there, so if you'd like to speak, please fill one of those out. That's not an absolutely necessary thing, but it helps with the flow of the meeting. We'll call you up. Please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then address your comments to the board versus to the applicant, please. And that's about it. Doug, would you please read the first item?
Land Tech Surveying and Planning, PLLC, 710 Lotta Road, New York, Greece, New York, 14612, on behalf of Mascot, Inc., request an informal discussion before the board with plans for a 17-lot, single-family residential subdivision with associated site improvements on a total of 16.63 acres located at 1698 Creek Street. The property is now or formerly owned by Penfield Creek Street LLC and is zoned R120. Application number 17P-0023.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Sharaba. I'm with Land Tech. I'm here this evening representing Mascot Development, and Lou Massey is here as well. I can answer any questions that I cannot. As the public notice states, this parcel is located on Creek Street. It is about 16.5 acres in size, located on the east side of Creek Street, just north of Bunker Hill Drive. We have access to public sanitary sewer, water, gas, electric, and also on this site is a woodlot E-pod. The site is, if you're familiar with Bunker Hill Drive, this kind of slopes greatly. It goes uphill. There's about 45 foot of grade change on this parcel. And as I said before, it's heavily treed. What we're proposing for this project is to create 17 lots. One lot will have the existing house to remain in about 1 acre, and 16 new homes. All the lots that we show on our concept plan are over the zoning requirement of 20,000 square feet. As you know, with 16 acres, half-acre lots, we get up to around 30 lots, we thought. So this development is suited to Mascot's business plan of having slightly larger slightly larger lots, so they can do homes starting around 2,200 square feet and going up from there. Our proposal is simple design with a cul-de-sac street going back. One of our concerns are the trees on the lot and buffering the neighbors. So what we were able to do is bring these houses close to the street, kind of leaving them near the minimum setback, but we were able to configure these parcels so that no house is closer than 100 feet from any outside property line. So the rear property line of the people on Bunker Hill Drive, these houses in this area, that's 100 feet away. So we feel that the neighbors, that's probably their main issue, is screening. Also, the issue of drainage has come up about this project. As I said, it slopes from east to west, so we're proposing a stormwater management facility down here near the right-of-way of Creek Street. That's the only place we can put it. But as this board knows, this is just the start of the project. We have a lot of work to do. We're hoping for some favorable comments so that we can do the topographic surveying, soil testing, and come back to you shortly with upgraded plan. We also have submitted plans preliminarily to Monroe County DOT. Creek Street is a county road, and they have no issues with our location of our proposed driveway. They do want us to show the adjacent house across the street so that any light spill could be reflected on that, so that'll be shown on future plans. We also submitted a preliminary plan to a traffic study. Was completed, just a trip generation letter to see if there'd be any impact to the roadway, and that came back positive that this small subdivision will not impact negatively the county road. Mascot Development proposes to have houses starting in a range of around 320,000 and up on this site, so we feel that it's going to be an asset to the neighborhood. And we're looking for your comments tonight and any comments from the public.
Okay. Thanks, John. I have a couple of quick comments. On the entryway, the divided entry, and the cul-de-sac, there was a couple of comments
Yes.
from staff about that. What?
So, just
What
like
are your
Bunker Hill
thoughts?
has a divided roadway, and we're getting a sense, I should back up, back in September, on the 26th, we invited the public to an informal meeting at the town rec, and some of their concerns were the AM traffic, and we felt that the split access would allow possibly to have cars travel to the south to get out down to 441 in the morning, and having that divided roadway, we might have a one in, two out configuration. County didn't have an issue with it, but we understand that the town had a comment about that. As for the cul-de-sac, we wanted to have an island in there to reduce pavement, help with green practices and stormwater management. But if that's an issue, we could talk about that. But we're just trying to make this a very aesthetically pleasing project.
Okay. The other question I had, the stormwater retention or the stormwater facility, is that a retention or a detention?
It's retention, and it's going to be,
So it'll
it's
have
going to be,
water
it's going to
all
be
the time.
DEC compliant stormwater system. It has not been designed. The configuration or the pond that we show there is very just to tell you that we know it's got to go there. We're proposing soil testing within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Okay.
I had a question, a couple of questions. John, are you looking for any, as far as zoning, is it in compliance with all setbacks and area?
It is, 100%.
there's no
All the lot
variances?
configurations meet the requirement. And the building pads, those are just the first floor. Those are 3,600 square foot rectangles we have on there. So those are large footprints. So we don't see any need for any variances.
Okay, including lot 16, which is just to the south of the entrance?
This,
I'm sorry, right below.
oh,
Yeah.
yes. We've had conversations with staff about that. What we want to do is have that lot, the house fronting on Creek Street, so it looks like it's part of the Creek Street houses,
Okay.
but access off the new road. Maybe possibly a side
So that
load.
would just be a side setback to the, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any landscaping along the rear property lines there for the house?
That, we're not proposing any landscaping, but we are proposing to leave some of the trees. So, we bought this property to keep the trees. It's a beautiful parcel. So right now, kicking around the idea, at least 10-foot conservation easement, possibly around the east and south property lines, so we can maintain those trees. But we may have some, as we know, we have stormwater management, stormwater systems, we might have to put some catch basins in there, so some of those might have to be put in. We've talked extensively with some of the neighbors on Bunker Hill, and that is, the screening is an issue, and we want to work with them. We've also been told that there's numerous dead trees that are there, and we'll work with them to clean those up and maintain that a lot better than it exists today.
Thanks.
Okay. The other board members have?
Yeah, John, you mentioned you had a preliminary meeting with neighbors.
Yes.
How many neighbors showed up?
Well, we had a little hiccup on the mailing list, so there wasn't 75 envelopes went out, and 50 were returned from the post office, so that was a little disheartening. We had about 10 people there.
10 people.
Yeah.
And you said that the neighbors favored having a split entrance?
They didn't say that about our design, but one of their questions was their concern about traffic, and particularly the AM traffic trying to head south. So that's why we incorporated it. Mascots had that in other projects. It's worked out well. The landscape median obviously is aesthetic as well.
Did you get any other comments from the neighbors that you?
Well, we were hoping
shared
to have
with the
more
board?
people, and I could provide you more information, but the comments were typical in nature, what's happening, how are you going to screen us, how's the drainage, and I think I was satisfiedly answered all those questions. The drainage we're going to keep on ourselves. We're not going to discharge to any of the neighbors. We are going to try to screen, leave as many trees as we can. As I said, there's not going to be any house closer than 100 feet to any property line. I think the questions were typical that this board hears, and I think we can address all of them.
And you're proposing to clean out the dead wood?
As part of our project, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have at least 2 people that would like to come up and speak. Please pardon me if I butcher your name or the pronunciation of your name. It's not on purpose. Do we have an Al Bradley? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Al Bradley. I live at 26 Bunker Hill Drive. So this will directly back up to my property. First, I just want to comment about the public meeting that was held at the town recreation center. I learned of the meeting when I got home that day. So there was no prior notice at all, and I was unable to attend that particular meeting. So I appreciate that you had that, but it was not something that was particularly helpful. And I'm pleased to hear the comments about there being a berm or retaining some trees there on the back of their property. That would be something we would absolutely favor as neighbors on Bunker Hill Drive. That there is some kind of a screen there would be definitely very helpful. There were certainly comments by Mr. Sharaba about the traffic on Creek Street. So I work in downtown Rochester, so I go out on Creek Street each morning, come home in the afternoon. The traffic backs up to at least Embry Road every morning. We have an issue with cut-through traffic through Bunker Hill Drive and City View and Hallmark and so forth, generally at very high speeds. Additional housing in that area will just make that worse. The old ostrich farm was developed not long ago, which added about 30 homes. There's another application this evening about a daycare center that will add additional traffic. We have 2 vacant gas stations on Browncroft Boulevard that are just an issue there. That while the intersection at Creek, Blossom, and Browncroft was improved a few years ago, there's no left turn lane there, and that's an issue. So I would encourage the town board to work with the county and the state, whoever necessary, to improve that further, to add left turn lane to improve traffic flow in that area. The traffic is definitely bad on Creek Street, so that really needs to be kept into account and taken into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, do we have, is it Walter Malden? Come on up.
Good evening, and thank you for having this meeting tonight for us to come together. My name is Walter Malden, M-A-U-L-D-I-N. I have been a resident on Creek Street for nearly 34 years. We've raised our family there. Our neighbors have raised their family. We've raised our neighbors to raise their families, and we plan to be there for a while longer. In looking at this project, I think it's both an opportunity to do something with some land that has been in a forest setting for a long time, but I think we should proceed with care. And I don't want to say caution, but just say care a second time. Historically, the land has been not just wooded, but essentially a forested piece of property. It's adjoined by another piece of property which just went on the market, about a 12 or 13 acre parcel, and it's across the street from some additional parcels that have changed hands in the last few years. I have about 6 or 7 quick comments. Now, some of the things I heard tonight I think answered a couple of them. I do think it's particularly important to pay attention to the border and its impact on the existing neighbors and on Creek Street, both from a visual and functional standpoint. I hope that the planning efforts will take the time and care to examine the specimen trees that may exist within the existing foliage and trees that are there. I have walked the site. There are a lot of critters out there right now, which I'm sure will be cleared up, but the forest-like setting, the opportunity to restore some of that to more of a park-like setting and take advantage of that for the long-term benefit of the community, I think would be a good thing. I know that from a habitat perspective, we have a lot of wildlife that have been in the area. In fact, along that stretch of Creek Street, we actually have deer crossing signs because we had several of them killed in front of our house in our first years there. That has abated quite a bit, but it's important to understand that between the turkeys and the skunks and the deer and the like, we have a lot of local non-tax-paying residents that need to be kept in mind as well. With regard to the retention pond, I know it's conceptual at this point. A couple of comments on that. The placement initially shows it being pretty close to the street. We have a lot of snow that gets piled up along the sides of the road. The runoff goes into the marginal swales that are currently there. And I hope that our design looks very closely at the protective distinction between what could be roadway runoff from the runoff that would be produced by the slope of the cleared land. The developer agent, land, did mention there's about a 40-foot drop in elevation from the east end to the west end, as I looked at the topo markings on one of the maps. And so I know we're going to get a lot of changes in how the water is captured, and the retention pond design needs to be very good with regard to that. A little bit concerned about, I know why the retention pond needs to be about where it is, but we do have families with multiple children under the age of 10 that live in the neighborhood. So the plan for how we delineate that space and put up any kind of protective barriers to reduce the risk of a kid wandering off into the pond would be a concern. Traffic levels on Creek Street, it used to be a quiet street. I'm at about 7:25 if I'm not out the door. I just retired, so I don't do that anymore. But when I used to do that, if I wasn't out the door by then, I had to wait in line at my house, and I'm a half mile north of Browncroft. The traffic is substantial. And so I think that, I don't know that this project can per se fix that, because we don't want to run through traffic to another side street. But I think the idea of possibly having two lanes for either egress, northbound or southbound, may provide an option that at least ought to be looked at by the town. It's a little bit over-designed for a small subdivision of this size, but I think sometimes you have to kind of look at those things to consider the conditions that are there. With respect to the intersection itself, I think that the design to delineate where the turning lanes are, and when you're coming off of Creek Street onto that street at night, the new street, whatever we call it, and to some extent as we leave it, need to make sure that the illumination of that is appropriate. We have had some improvements on Creek Street in the last 5 years with respect to street lighting. Appreciate those things. Most of the side streets now have at least one of those large single davit light poles.
Overhead.
Yeah, overhead. We may want to look at something not only that does that, but the lights negotiation. There's a lot of movements there with the streets there, across with Mary Hill, Bunker Hill, as well as a few of the driveways. So you may want to look very closely at the lighting design, something smaller, but kind of delineating the island or something that gives it a distinction so owners can spot it as well their guests, and probably with the approach and egress positions for signage as well. Don't want sign pollution, but just thinking through that. I did not hear about the earlier meeting. I know that my neighbors talked with someone from the group doing the initial design. We're past that point, but let's be sure we're double sure we're checking to communicate at all stages. And let me see if I have anything else. I know that the house, this is conceptual at this point. Obviously, we're not going to build square houses, not at that price range. It's good to see that that's there as a concept for conversation, but one of the thoughts I have, and I don't know if it makes sense or not, I'm not an engineer, but with the degree of slope, and maybe Bunker Hill offers us some history about how swift the water is when it comes running down the street. Since we're dealing with that kind of a thing, if there's anything that can be done with a slightly curvilinear nature of the drive or anything else that maybe abates a bit the straight shot, if you will, of the drive. I know there's a little bit of extra roadway there, but possibly something of that sort might be of help. Not like they got in San Francisco with that famous street, but anything that might offer a bit of a curvature or something that would help abate some of the velocity that could pick up from the water. And plenty of basins at the base, because where the drive is, I know the elevations are such, when I walked it, there's some deep spots there that they're going to have to do some land movements to make it all work right. So, but just look for continued communication on it, feedback with neighbors. I think they have legitimate questions and concerns, but I think they'd like to, at the end, make it be a nice proposal, nice homes, nice neighborhood, that in 20 years, those owners will say, our kids grew up here, and it felt like the park setting, and it felt like the stuff that we've enjoyed for so long, and it can be a complimentary thing. So that's all I have to say. If any questions or anything.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, would anyone else like to comment on this application, or this sketch plan, rather? Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Hi, I'm Tracy Ammerman. I live at 175 City View Drive. My property is right here, and I've got a question. There's a flag on the fence about probably 12, 15 feet inside where I think the property line shows here. So, and it's all being mowed. This used to all be mowed, which was pretty nice, but they're mowing about, and I think it says property is mowing, they used to mow this, and they're still mowing about 15 feet here. And I'm just wondering, is the border correct here, or what's the flag doing here on the fence? Does anybody know?
My guess is that will be worked out. If it's not already worked out by a licensed surveyor, it will
Yeah.
be.
I mean, I saw them out there, so, but,
So-
and we don't really have any trees along here. All that's here on the back of our property is what we've put in, or what, there's a big arborvitae there, but the rest is just like grasses and stuff like that. So we're definitely gonna, you know, I don't know if there's, I don't know what I want there, you know, but I'm a little concerned with having to see this roadway coming up through here. And I know there's a degree there, but we're pretty even right in here. My other concern is that I wouldn't want any elevation from the house down that's going to impact my backyard with water, et cetera. So, other than that, right now, I don't have anything else.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else like to comment on this, sir? Come on up.
Good evening, Board. Mr. Etchke, do I have that right?
You do.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
not involved with this, but I do have a wonderment at the County Line Road. But my wonderment has to do with retention.
Do you mind introducing yourself and,
Bill Windland, 2181 County Line. The retention ponds. We get warnings all the time, local TV stations, radio stations, to not have water, stagnant water sitting around. My wonderment is it good to have retention rather than detention? The second thing is, all around the town, Webster, Penfield, no matter where you look, you have these ponds, and they're not protected. Are we waiting for a tragedy to happen? Young children are brought up in these neighborhoods, they wander and they drown, possibility of drowning. Fortunately, as far as I know, we haven't had that, but it's a wonderment. And I'm thinking maybe the way these developers are running their business, maybe that should be included, that these retention ponds, even if we can't get rid of the mosquitoes, that would protect small children playing from their yards. That's my thought, that's my wonderment.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, do we have anybody else that would like to comment on this sketch plan? Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, yes, would you like to come on up?
My name is Sharon Law, 497 Harrogate Drive, right off of Creek Street, about a half a mile from Browncroft. Just a couple things that I wanted to comment on. One, I've lived in my home for about 13 years. I selected that neighborhood because it wasn't as developed as some other areas of Rochester. So after seeing the development down by the ostrich farm and then adding this one in addition, it just seems like it's changing the landscape of the neighborhood that I found appealing when I moved there. In addition, I also echo the concerns about the traffic. This morning, I think it took me 6 minutes. It takes usually between 6 and 10 minutes to get from the end of Harrogate Drive to Browncroft. And only because someone's courteous enough to let me out into the flow of traffic, I've noticed how far it's backed up. I'm also concerned on the impact to traffic on Browncroft itself. So we've added 26 homes on the Ostrich Farm. The 17 that are proposed here, I think there's a larger number out on the corner of 5 Mile Line Road and Atlantic. I take 590 north to work, so I have to go down Browncroft to get to 590. And in the wintertime, 590 or Browncroft can be backed up down to North Landing Road or even closer to the intersection of Creek and Browncroft. So just concerned about the impact on traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Yes, come on up.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Richardson. I'm on 35 Bunker Hill Drive. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm across the street from the Bradleys and everybody else on Bunker Hill, the Mets. And I had just found out about it, about the building, about the homes being built just a couple weeks ago. So I didn't know anything about the prior meeting, but just like the lady just said earlier, our neighborhood is quiet and peaceful, and the maturity of the trees is what brings, families here. And a lot of our neighbors are like myself, who have bought your parents' home, and you come back home, actually. But what concerns me with all the new homes being built is what she just said. You kind of lose that, all the nature there. We have the deer that come every year, they have their babies, and, it's quiet, it's peaceful, and being across the street from it, I am going to see the lights and the noise just as much as everybody on that side of Bunker Hill. And the traffic is exactly that. I work in Henrietta, so I have to be at work at 7. I used to have to be at work at 8. But if I don't leave my house by 7:10, it's past Bunker Hill, like Alan said. It's like all the way down Creek Street, and it takes 45 minutes for me to get from home to work, which is 15 minutes away. But not so much the traffic. I mean, the traffic is an issue, but it's just the whole maturity of the homes, or the nature behind everybody's homes, and the trees is what we love about that neighborhood. And I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Okay, would anyone else like to comment? Sir, come on up.
My name's Joe Moynihan. I live at 481 Harrogate Drive. I just wanted to share briefly that something that has come up with past town meetings from some years ago. One that comes to mind is I recall when the town paid a ludicrous amount of money to a consulting firm. This was in reference to putting a speed median on Browncroft Boulevard, along with some other redesign of roads. I recall that this is, as I say, my memory could fail me if this is so many years ago, but the consultant had come up with a proposal to extend Panorama Trail directly across through that church property, and then curve to the west and reconnect with Old Browncroft Boulevard. After having acquired the property to do that, then they would put planted medians down the center of Browncroft to slow down traffic. The consultant got about $250,000 to come up with this, and the town didn't have any money to do any of the proposed things, so I kind of wonder what that was all about. But I recall at that time, the question came up about, no, the town can't do anything about straightening out the intersection of Creek Street and Browncroft, or the other, Blossom, on the south side of Browncroft. Of course, that changes names, but it's essentially Blossom and Creek Street being one and the same. They don't intersect Browncroft at a right angle. That's why the traffic, one of the reasons, in my opinion, why the traffic is so badly backed up there in the morning is when they don't meet at a right angle, people looking to turn left and go east on Browncroft, they don't go out all the way into the middle of the intersection the way you ordinarily would at a 90-degree angle to make that left-hand turn. I thought at that time, and I brought it up at that time, that this was a perfect opportunity for the town, or I guess in this case the state, to acquire that vacant property, the old mobile station, where they could then correct that alignment of that intersection so that they could take, I guess you could say, deal with the curvature where Creek Street and Blossom meet Browncroft. That's involved money, and nobody was going to spend it then, and I assume they're not going to spend that now. I acknowledge the fact that that's not completely germane to the issue that we're talking about here, but I am inclined to agree with those people who articulate the sentiment that the traffic is bad now and it's going to get worse. I would imagine that just with the construction vehicles to create the development, that's going to be a significant effect, I guess you might say, on the traffic situation as it is right now. In essence, I'm sort of putting out the thought that I know that this straightening out the traffic on Creek Street at that intersection isn't going to get resolved tonight, and it's not within the purview of this meeting, but failure to do that by some division of the government is going to result in, I think, some serious ramifications for traffic, in light of the fact that these gentlemen are, I mean, it's zoned for residential and they're not asking any variance, so I'd say that's it's pretty much going to happen. But the fallout is going to be, I think, a severe increase in traffic on Creek Street, which already needs to be addressed or abated, I guess you might say. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Just to answer your questions in terms of that intersection, Browncroft Boulevard, Atlantic Avenue are state roads. And as with any state highway, the town is basically powerless to do anything. There's many places where we'd love to have turning signals and wider lanes and shoulders and all those sorts of things, and the state DOT is an entity that has its own agenda.
Sure.
So,
yeah. It was articulated then, and in fact, printed in the local paper that, yeah, the state's not going to spend the dough, period. It's just, I guess, this is they're not going to rectify that intersection for sure when they've got all the bridges that they need to fix and other things. So
right.
That's not going to happen, I don't think, but it's going to be a problem, I think.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, would anyone else like to comment on this application, or rather sketch plan? All right, any other comments from the board? Going once, going twice? Okay. you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to let the board know just a couple things. That I was failed to let the board know that mascot development is a proven track record in the town. If this board remembers Sparrow Point Development off of Baird Road, very nice development. Mascot's been in business for 60 years. They're here to stay. 3 generations. The young members of the family are intimately involved with the business, so it's not going anywhere. And Mascot also directed me to, I just want to put one thing to bed. This meeting that we had, it was set up by us outside the town's purview, our cost, our time, to try to solicit people. It was not intended to negate people from being there. So it was a mishap that happened. We apologize, but there was no ill intent. So I just want to reiterate that, and that I also take very detailed notes and understand the questions that the people have brought up, and we'll make reflect changes on our plan. And I just, one other thing, I believe the board has a copy of the traffic chip generation letter from SRF dated October 4th for your files. And I know the traffic's an issue, but I hope that answers a lot of questions. And thanks again for your time.
Okay, terrific, great. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, everyone, for coming for this sketch plan. And we'll go on to item number 2.
Marathon Engineering, 39 Cascade Drive, Rochester, New York, 14614. On behalf of Anthony Arena Jr., requests under Chapter 250, Article 11-11.2 of the Code of the Town of Penfield for preliminary and final subdivision approval for a 2-lot subdivision of a 31.3-acre property located at 1830 Sweets Corners Road. The property is now formally owned by Anthony Arena Jr. and zoned RA2, application number 17P-0024, SBL number 126.01-1-19.11.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ray Ramondi with Marathon Engineering, and I'm also joined tonight with Mike Crooks, representing Anthony Arena Jr. We're here tonight requesting an approval for the 2-lot subdivision on 1830 Sweets Corners Road. It's presently a 31.3 acre lot. We propose to subdivide it into a 2-acre lot and a 29-acre lot. And no further site plan development or construction is planned for the subdivision lot. It's strictly a change in the map to adjust it to have 2 code-worthy lots. Both lots comply with all the zoning from the RA2 district that it's located in. And we intend to do no further development work on the property at all. So it's pretty straightforward. Do you have any questions?
Okay, want to start off?
I think you already answered it, but my one question would be why, but you said you just want to create 2 legal lots and turn what is now an office building back into a residential building?
I think the intention is to,
we really don't intend to change the use of the building at this point. The reason we did combine the 3 parcels into one originally is because we had a large horse barn and stables on the original parcel 1830, and we intended to keep it. And it would have been very difficult to subdivide the properties or split them up and maintain the side setback requirements to that existing building. Once the project got started, we decided we didn't want the building there anymore, so we've dismantled it and removed it. So it allows us to subdivide that 1830, the home at 1830, back out legally without any variance or anything. So it just made more sense to subdivide it back into a single lot rather than having 2 potential residents on one tax.
Okay, so it's still going to remain an office-type building, not
That's our
residential?
intent, to use it for the horse operation as an office, but yeah, for the meantime.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
I had one question. The existing barn on the 2-acre parcel that you're subdividing out,
Yes.
is there any livestock in that building, or would there be? Okay.
No, it's pretty small. It's just used for storage right now.
Okay, Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Anyone in the audience care to comment on this application? No? Okay, thank you for your presentation. We'll move on to item number 3.
Marathon Engineering, 39 Cascade Drive, Rochester, New York, 14614. On behalf of Eric Graff, requests under Chapter 250, Article 12-12.2 of the Code of the Town of Penfield for final preliminary and final site plan approval to construct a new child care facility with associated site improvements on a total of 3.31 acres located at 1280 Creek Street and 85 Sovereign Drive, to be known as Kidtopia Daycare. The property is now or formerly owned by Retlaw Rect and zoned LB and GB. Application number 17P-0025, SBL numbers 093.15-1-2.115 and 093.15-1-2.116.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Matt Tomlinson with Marathon Engineering. I'm joined by Eric Graff here, as well as Alan Rossignol, who is representing Edge Architecture, the architect for the building. We are at 1280 Creek Street and 85 Sovereign Drive, 2 parcels. The development is going to be primarily on 1280 Creek Street. 85 Sovereign Drive is part of the purchase agreement, but no development is proposed for that lot. The project is located at the intersection of Creek Street, which is County Road 22, and Penweb Park, which services a residential cul-de-sac development behind the project. And what we're requesting, as mentioned in the board's application, is preliminary and final approval. We do currently have an application before the zoning board for several variances on the property. As you know, this project is on a lot that fronts on 2 properties with a very small developable area, and I think that it has been vacant for quite a while because of that. So with this proposal, we are requesting 4 variances, front setback variance to Penweb, a size. The town code has some restrictions in there for square footage of daycares. I think they just don't want to build a airport hangar that we can stack a lot of kids inside of. So that's one that we're asking for. A buffer to residential. This parcel that is, I believe, a residential home is, or a senior's is zoned residential, even though it's a commercial use. And we're also proposing 34 parking spaces instead of 36. We feel that meets the needs of the development and limits the amount of impervious area that we're proposing on the project. So we have appeared before the town for sketch plan, as well as it's been reviewed by the PRC town staff and been referred to county development and planning for their comments. As part of the sketch plan and town staff review previously, we've been able to flesh out a lot of the issues that have come up, traffic being one of them. Other comments included noise, the number of parking, whether or not that was sufficient to service the project, and also some requested stormwater management facility upgrades at the request of town staff to bring that into compliance with the current standards. That's a stormwater management facility that does service a portion of the residential as well as other pieces of the Sovereign Drive, private drive development. As I mentioned, we appeared before the zoning board. They seemed receptive to the variances that we were asking. However, prior to granting those variances, they wanted to ensure that the planning board had an opportunity during this process to comment and to give us any feedback that may affect those variances one way or the other. Associated improvements, I mentioned the stormwater management facility. We'll be proposing 4 light poles, 18 feet in height. They'll be LED aimable, no spill off of the site other than to light the entrances. This is a facility that's going to close relatively early, meaning once the last kid's picked up, it's not used for events after that, that kind of thing. So the lights can be dimmed, turned off during the night to ensure that there is no impact to the neighborhood. We're also proposing some landscaping, street trees, a new monument sign with landscaping around it, and we'll be restoring the stormwater management facility once that's regraded. All the utilities for the site are right there, stormwater, water, gas and electric, sanitary, so there's no issues from a service standpoint there. We have also addressed the town's comments to our submission, engineering comments in writing. I believe the board was provided those yesterday or today. I'm happy to answer any specific concerns that the board may have. I think we're agreeable to most of them, and we'll follow up in our final approval package after the zoning board meeting of next week with those revised plans for your consideration as well. And I just wanted to introduce Alan Rossignol for a couple of minutes to talk through the building. I believe he's got some samples here to show the board as well. Representative on the elevation that I passed out are some of those materials and colors, and so he can step you through that, and then we can answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Alan Rossignol. As Matt said, I'm the architect for the project. So just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the building itself and sort of how we approach design. The first thing we did when we approached this site was look at the neighboring properties, specifically on Creek Street, because the building does have 2 fronts, one on Creek Street, one on Penn Web, and you might also argue Sovereign Drive. But we just look at scale and proportion as it relates to the adjacent buildings. And also the site being a long linear site allows or sort of influences the way that the building is oriented, which in this case is on an east-west axis, which is actually a very nice setup for sustainability, daylighting opportunities on north and south facades. So that's where the footprint of the building really started to evolve for this particular site and the scale of the building itself. We then obviously have the neighborhood and the residential beyond down Penn Web, and we certainly took that into consideration when we look at the design of the elevations and the scale and proportions that we took an approach to scale it down so it's not such a mammoth building. And on Creek Street, we've broken up that scale, and I think your package includes the elevations on Creek Street specifically, where we've broken it down into 3 scalable entities on Creek Street. And then as we go along Penn Web in this elevation, we definitely try to bring the scale down of the space and the features of the building as we go deeper into the site. The building is more of a contemporary transitional style architecture, which is meant to, obviously for the corporation and the branding and young parents, be one of the attractive elements of what the brand is trying to approach versus some of the other brands that are a little more traditional and gable roofed. The materials we've chosen for the building are a very siding product that's a solid siding product, like hardy board. It's not a vinyl siding product. It's a finished product. It is set up in a lap siding arrangement. We've got some wood tones, we've got some grays and blacks. And on the front of the building and entry area, we're highlighting it with glass. And the glass has no mirror reflectivity to it. It's much more of a technically advanced transparent glass, and I have those samples here that I'd be happy to show you folks if you had interest in seeing what the look, feel, and color ranges are.
Sure.
So these are a sample of the siding products. They are laid onto the building in a lap arrangement, but you can see they're a very durable, solid siding product.
That's in the eastern portion?
This is in this range of the building. And then this is meant to be more like a wood plank look, so it'll be similar product, and we paint it, or we can get it in a, like a cedar tone colored, where it has some variation in it, a little bit of a wood grain. This product here represents the wood graining that you'd get in the siding, and this is sort of the tone of that cedar color that we would be going for, that you see there in this part of the building here. The metal siding follows along in the same color range of the siding, so it's a very neutral grayish taupe color. And then this is actually a physical sample of the proposed glass that we would be using that can give you a sense that you can see it's not a mirrored effect to it, and has some really good transparency to it from the street.
I did want to mention two other things. Just to touch on traffic a little bit, because I'm sure you'll have some questions on it. We did have a trip generation letter prepared by SRF Associates that was submitted to County DOT as part of the referral package. They didn't come back with any comments on that through the Monroe County Planning. We also have a couple different distribution paths from the site between Sovereign and Penweb. That is part of the purpose of the multiple entrances that we're showing on the plan to provide bus drop-off, parent drop-off, staff coming in or out, to provide some flexibility if there is backup or limited turning movements during the peak hour rush. So I just wanted to touch on that. And then in the package that I gave you, as well as with the emailed response to comments, was a layout plan and a perspective of what the equipment was going to be in the playground. I know there was some concern or a need to see what's planned out there. That is not final designed, but that is, meaning the colors may change, a slide may change, but in general, that is what's intended to be back there. So we can answer any questions that you guys may have at this point.
Okay.
So these renderings from the park people are not an accurate representation of the equipment that you intend to use?
That, as of right now, that is the planned
That is the plan.
equipment.
Pending approval from the state agency.
Correct. And that application typically goes in a few months before occupation, 3 months before occupation. So it's, we got to build the building first, so it's kind of a chicken or an egg type thing, but.
Yeah, so, which brings us to, you know, if the town is favorable in approving your project, there's a mild concern about information contained in the application with Child and Family Services that we won't have an opportunity to see according to your proposal until the time that you're requesting a certificate of occupancy. So, you know, we're wondering if there's a possible opportunity that you could fill out a form, give us an idea of what kinds of information is going to be on this application to Child and Family Services, so that we can have some reasonable assurance that the conditions that the planning board is responsible for would not be altered in that application, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, I believe that when we come in with a building permit or a permit for construction, that it'll be reviewed and to see how it is in conformance with the, whatever conditions you may place on the project. So I think there's a level of review there. And if we're deemed.
That's a building permit review. That's not the planning board or the town planner or the town engineer's review. So,
Okay.
you know, we're trying to overcome just a potential for, you know, information that might not be consistent with what we thought we were
Sure.
approving, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So if it's acceptable to the board, we'd be open to a condition that requires a copy of the application be submitted to you prior to submission to the state for substantial conformance with the approved plan.
Okay, well, we'll discuss that in our workshop, but thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that OCFS, once you apply, you have 3 months to complete the application.
Introduce yourself.
Eric Graff, 90 Coventry Ridge. So once you get that application, you've got those 90 days, and so that means at the end of the 90 days, they're going to come in for approval, so we have to wait for that reason. What I could do is I could provide you with a sample of what that application does look like, which is available publicly online.
So I have a list of the information, but not necessarily specific to the project, but we can fill in those gaps and provide it at your request.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I'm good, AJ.
you good? Other questions?
Good.
I have a question for Alan. Is your last name spelled like the skis?
Yeah, that was an easy question.
So are you like an heir to the ski fortune or something?
Yeah, this is just a hobby, but no.
Figured I'd ask. That, I guess the eastern portion looks in the rendering, I almost assumed that it was some type of stone, the way the lights and the darks are interspersed. But your presentation said that it would be more of a...
It's a sided product that we are doing some variation in color to give it a variated effect, so it's not one solid monotone looking thing. But you're right, it would have that appearance of a stone facade. But it is not stone.
So, walking or driving past it, what would the passerby assume that it, would they think that it was stone, or would they think that it's
I think it
siding that was
appear to look
you know,
like a
what-
mottled, aged wooden appearance.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Anyone in the audience like to comment on this application? Nobody? All right, any other comments from the board? Thank you very much for your presentation. All right, Zach, whenever you're ready to
Item 3.
read item number 3 or 4.
Passero Associates, 242 West Main Street, Suite 100, Rochester, New York, 14614. On behalf of Auntie Tommaso Homes, requests under Chapter 250, Article 11-11.2 of the Code of the Town of Penfield for final site plan approval for the construction of 20 single-family residential lots with associated site improvements on a total of 16 plus or minus acres at 1200 5 Mile Line Road, known as Watersong Phase 5. The project is now or formerly owned by Auntie Tommaso Homes and Mika Group LLC and zoned R120. Application number 17P-0026, SBL number 091.01-1-37.001. We wanted to note that there is a correction to this. It's actually 21 lots, which is consistent with the preliminary approvals, or the preliminary approval and plat map filed in 2001. This was just an error on our part.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Jess Sudol from Passero Associates. Also here with me this evening is Ralph Auntie Tommaso on behalf of the applicant, and Matt Moore, one of our project engineers at Passero. We're here for requesting approval and review of the final phase of the Watersong project. It's been a pretty long journey, but a very successful journey at that. The final phase is, as mentioned, 21 lots, and as we have in the past with several of the other phases, we're anxiously anticipating being able to bring Homerama to Penfield in 2018. It's not set in stone yet 100%, but we're extremely close. And because we feel that we are very close and we are going to be successful, we are pulling the trigger and moving forward with this proposed development. It's pretty straightforward. You know, this all was part of an overall 278 cluster approval. You know, every 3 or 4 years or so, we have come in with a new phase, and this is no different. All the utility stubs, connections, roads, and everything are there for us to connect to, and everything will essentially be constructed in the same manner as all the previous phases. One of the nice things about this phase is that with Mayor's Garden and Watersong Trail, it'll actually eliminate a dead end and create a loop going around the project. One of the things that this phase also includes is the construction finally of the sidewalk along 5 Mile Line Road. You know, that was something that was required, as you know, you folks know, all the projects in Penfield for the most part do have sidewalks on the public right of way, and we'll be finally constructing those as part of this project. We are trying to move relatively quickly. You know, the Homerama schedule always kind of puts us in this situation where we're trying to get a road in by the end of the year and really up against the, you know, November timeframe, because we have to deliver lots to our home builders in the February-March timeframe so that they can be ready for the show in July. So, you know, once again, we're in that situation, but we have been working very diligently to move this forward. We have received comments from the town engineering department. We have gone through all those comments. We've addressed all of those comments, and we have submitted revised drawings back to the town. There was nothing in there that was any kind of showstopper or anything that caused us any heartburn. Again, it was all relatively simple things to address. So, you know, with that said, there will be, you know, streetlights and gutters and sidewalks internal to the project, again, all consistent with the previous phases. So it's not a whole lot much further to say, and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just had a few questions. The previous phases, to what percentage is that built out approximately, or are
Sure, is
there-
this also on? So we have this color-coded map here. Phase 1, completely built out. Phase 2 is completely built out. Phase 3A is built out. That was actually the first Homerama that we had here in 2009 or 10. Phase 4A is built out, I think, except for a lot or two. And then there's, of the 7 lots in Phase 4B, I think there might be 2 or 3 open lots there. 2 open in Phase 4B. So it's really, in all these phases, there's, you know, a handful of scattered open lots, one here, one there. And then we have not built the infrastructure yet for Phase 3B. That's this area down here. Phase 3B actually has some of the nicer lots in the entire subdivision. A lot of the people and families involved in the development have reserved those lots for building for themselves and for their kids and for their family members. So, you know, that's going to be coming soon, but that's why that one's currently vacant. Those lots are all kind of reserved for people who've been dealing with and, you know, working on this subdivision for 16 years.
Okay, and then assuming Homerama does occur at your site, what would be the impact to the rest of the site? I guess logistics-wise for materials and so forth.
Yeah, one of the things that we plan to do is work closely with Monroe County DOT. We've already had preliminary conversations with them about getting a temporary access road back here further south on the site so that we don't have to have all the people from Homerama coming through and driving through the project. If not, it would be similar to what the show was, I think it was 3 years ago, where they would enter here and then they could take a right on Watersong Trail and immediately they're into the open area, actually the former parking lot for some of the previous Homeramas, so that they're not driving through the whole project. And then they would have a haul road that kind of goes through the development area, so they're not driving through the subdivision.
Okay, and is there proposed temporary parking?
Yes, there is. There's actually a staging plan that we submitted with the revised drawings. The temporary parking would exist down here in Phase 3B.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from the board? Anyone from the audience care to comment on this? Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Rob Goodwin. I'm a resident at 7 Watersong Trail, right here. Appreciate the time to speak today, and we're actually excited about the proposal. We first bought our house 2 years ago, and we actually were kind of excited because it was undeveloped behind us. So we thought, hey, maybe they'll never build, right? This is great, no one behind us. But what we quickly realized was this kind of vacant property attracts all-terrain vehicles, other suspicious activity, bizarre cars, people parking. So we're actually happy to hear that this will be completed. That's great news. Only concern is about drainage. This section up here, so I live right here on the corner. So immediately behind us is this Phase 5, and it's elevated significantly. So my backyard is a slope, and so we already have standing water issues today. And so my whole reason for coming today is just to inquire and ensure that there's some kind of drainage plan where, especially lot 144, which would be right behind us, drains itself, right, instead of draining onto my property. It is a significant issue today. And so again, I just wanted to come today and to see if there is a plan for drainage. In other words, so this lot and the others can drain themselves rather than, because it comes right downhill into our property today.
Okay. Good point. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
I mean, you can comment more if you want.
No, that's like I said, we're actually really excited about the development.
Okay.
We just want to make sure the water's taken care of.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to comment on this? Okay.
Yeah, just, like to respond to the drainage comment. Yes, there absolutely is a plan for drainage. Right now, that whole area up behind this gentleman's house was used as the parking and staging area for the previous home-arounds, as I had mentioned. And so what happened is that whole area kind of sheet drains from south to north in his general direction. With us improving that area, putting a road in, putting gutters in, catch basins and storm sewers, we're now going to collect all that water and put it into the storm sewer system where it's supposed to go, and then take it out to the pond. We're also proposing new drainage inlets in this area right in the back of lot 144 and a drainage swale to really control all that water, which right now, admittedly does kind of sheet drain towards his general direction.
Okay. And you'd mentioned that this will complete the roadway all the way around?
Not all the way around necessarily, but from Myers Garden here, this loop here, there'd be one section in here would be the last section that would then finally complete everything once that's built.
Okay. So there's still a stub 3A?
That's correct, with a turnaround.
Okay.
Now, I know, I'm not sure this board would be inclined to do so, but I'd just like to put the request out there that if there was any ability to consider an actual final subdivision approval this evening, just to help us with our schedule, we'd certainly appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay. No other comments? Thank you for your presentation.
Okay. Woods Oviatt Gilman, LLP, 700 Crossroads Building, 2 State Street, Rochester, New York, 14614. On behalf of India Community Center of Rochester, Inc., requests under 250, Chapter 250, Article 13-13.2 of the Code of the Town of Penfield for an expansion to a conditional use permit for the summer camp program. The property is located at 2171 Monroe Wayne County Line Road on a total of 20.41 acres. The property is now formally owned by the India Community Center of Rochester, Inc. and zoned RA2. Application 17P-0027, SBL number 141.02-1-5.1.
Mr. Chairman, due to my firm's involvement in this case, I will be recusing myself.
Okay. Thank you for the notice. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Betsy Brugg. I'm an attorney with the firm of Woods Oviatt Gilman, and I'm here on behalf of the India Community Center. With me tonight is Dr. Kamat, who is here in connection with the property and the Hindu Heritage Summer Camp, which is the issue of the application. As you mentioned, the property is 20.4 acres in size. It happens to be in the Rural Agricultural District, the RA2 district. Back in 1984, the India Community Center purchased what was then a vacant, not well-maintained church property. They've operated there pursuant to a conditional use permit since that time. Back in 2002, they came into this board and they obtained approval essentially for the construction and operation of camp facilities. So a conditional use permit was granted back in 2002 to allow the use of the property for a camp. Eventually 6 cabins were built and a bathhouse. It has been used and operated as a camp. Back in 2004, the property owners came in at that time and requested and obtained a temporary approval, short-term approval, to allow them to essentially expand the conditional use permit to allow other not-for-profit organizations in the community to use the facility. They actually just never pursued that, so that really didn't come to fruition, and that sort of just lapsed. So the camp that operates there is the Hindu Heritage Summer Camp. It's been very well received. There's been articles in the New York Times. They've done a fabulous job running a top quality camp that really is an asset to the community, and it's well run, well maintained. They currently, I have to make a correction to my letter of intent that was in your application. They run 2 two-week sessions of the camp. They have a week of counselor training, which is, staff training essentially for the camp. They also run a small adult spiritual retreat for adults, about 30 people, not anything major. So they had been operating, and their occupancy, based on the types of beds that they had in the facility, was at one time limited to 84. I think they didn't know what the number was. When they came in and obtained the conditional use permit, they didn't know how successful the camp would be. They threw out a ballpark number, and as a result, one of the conditions on the approval is that there will be a maximum of 100 people. That was a random number that was thrown out. It was not based on any data, plans for enrollment, certainly not on any limitation that the town had sought to impose at that time. Since that time, they are a camp regulated by the Department of Health under the New York State Public Health Law. So they work closely with the Department of Health that regulates them and comes in and inspects them regularly. And it was discovered that if they changed their beds to bunk beds and followed the regulations, they actually could accommodate more beds. So they currently can accommodate, and there's a permit, it's included in your application. The permit says 120. That is specifically campers. They actually can have up to 144 occupants in their existing cabins. There was a letter issued by the fire marshal a few weeks ago raising some question with respect to the applicable state codes and what the applicable amount of square footage required per occupant. He had some concerns. We've addressed them. That's, I guess, why Jim has recused himself, because I did confer with T.Y. Lin. They did prepare a letter, submit it to the fire marshal. I believe the fire marshal now understands and is in agreement that we do accommodate the number of 144 in the cabins as requested. We did provide him a copy with the public health law, and I think as of today, I understood he was out at the property, and I believe he is satisfied that we do not have any issue with the occupancy. Okay, so there were a number of conditions on that original special permit, and while we are kind of cleaning up the conditions, and now that the camp has been operating, it's been a huge success, it's really a wonderful asset to the community, we've decided it's time to clean up some of the other conditions as well. So the first one, as I mentioned, is that the permit limits occupancy to no more than 100 people at any time. So we're proposing, we put in 150, we really just rounded. That does not, the 144 is how many occupants can actually sleep at the camp. We rounded it to 150 because you might have a music instructor, a dance instructor, a religious leader. There might be other people present that aren't sleeping at the camp. So I just thought it would be, just the more prudent thing to round it up a little bit. The second condition limiting outdoor activities from 7 to 10 p.m. We've respectfully requested that be extended to be 11 p.m., not because there's a plan to like have, huge activities in the evening or anything. It's just more consistent and in line with the town code and the noise ordinance. Currently, they actually, they operate much of their activity inside the main building. They have a 15,000 square foot, principal building. It is a summer camp, so kids are outside during the day and the afternoons. They do sometimes have bonfires. The younger campers are required to be in their cabins by 9 or 9:30, and older campers by 10. They don't have any outdoor swimming pool. They don't have a tennis court. They don't have ball fields. To be honest with you, I was just outside. There's still kids out on the ball fields. We're in a residential neighborhood. I mean, it's kind of normal type of activity. There's a few people out there, but they don't have these types of facilities outdoors. So there's not really that type of activity. However, they would like some flexibility at the, as camp winds down at the end of the day for the adults to, clean up, be outdoors, engaging in activities, and the restriction says outdoor activities shall be limited to 7 to 10. It's not very specific, so I thought we may as well just tidy up that condition and ask that that be modified. The third condition that I want to bring up and is included in my letter of intent. The summer operations shall be limited to members and guests of the India Community Center membership for purposes of cultural and educational opportunities. Weekend retreats and similar uses of the facility are permitted and restricted to members and guests of the ICC. The intent of the permit is to provide a range of services for the membership of the ICC only. The camp is a religious, cultural, and education camp. At this point, it is a religious and cultural and educational type of a use. As you may or may not know, there's a whole body of law on religious uses and educational uses. There are presumptions and law that protects these uses. They are recognized to be consistent with residential zoning. It's sort of an unusual restriction because most churches do not have membership. We would basically like this institution, this organization, to be treated like every other, organization of its type in the town. So essentially, there is no other church in town that has restrictions where they can't have people who are not members of the same church. The local camps, they're open to people that are, you can go to the town rec camps, they're open to people who don't live in the town of Penfield. The Y camp, you don't have to be a member of the Y to go to the Y camp. So we really are just asking for that condition to be modified so it is essentially, treats the India Community Center the same way that we treat every other similar cultural, religious organization in the community. In addition, they had obtained approval in 2004 to allow the facility to be rented, to be used by other not-for-profits, maybe another church in town that wants to have a retreat. That was granted. They did meet the requirements for the conditional use permit at that time. They simply didn't exercise any rights pursuant to that. We'd like to have, again, that opportunity to do so. I think what we're willing to agree is that it doesn't matter who's using the camp. As long as we don't exceed the parameters of the conditional use permit, we don't exceed this intensity of use, the type of use, the nature of use remains the same. So it really shouldn't matter whether it's Hindu kids or Episcopal kids or Catholic kids or some other community group. So we'd like to ask that that condition also be removed. We have addressed all of the criteria in the code for the granting of the conditional use permit. We're not here for a new conditional use permit. We've actually already met these criteria before. We're here for a modification and expansion, essentially. Expansion in that we're increasing the number of individuals that would be able to be involved with the camp. Let's see. I don't know if you'd like me to go through each and every one of the conditional use permit criteria. I am happy to do so. I have done so in writing. I do know there was some concern or question raised. There was a question raised in the past. We do have one particular neighbor who has, I think, contacted the town a couple years ago, who I understand stopped in today, and again had some questions about the noise associated with the camp. I guess what I need to point out to the board is that this is not a variance, this is not a prohibited use, this is a conditionally permitted use. Residential neighborhoods include churches, camps, community centers. We have that right here at the town hall. As I said, I was outside, there's kids on the ball fields, people live, I don't know, I've got to think that's less than 1,000 feet across the street to the homes on the other side of the street. But this is very typical, normal types of noise. I would also point out that among the conditionally permitted uses in the district, and as the board I'm sure already knows, conditionally permitted uses are essentially uses that are deemed permitted. There is case law, they are legislatively determined to be in harmony with the district so long as they meet the requirements of the conditional use permit. So these are not prohibited uses. And I would point out among the other conditionally permitted uses, this is probably one of the less intense uses on that list. It includes churches and similar religious institutions, but we have hospitals. Could you imagine the sirens associated with a hospital or a healthcare facility? Public schools, parks, playgrounds, those are routinely, regularly located in residential neighborhoods. Educational uses like religious uses, there's a whole body of case law about how they are protected and consistent with residential neighborhoods. So obviously public schools would have a lot more students, a lot more activity. They also have nighttime activity. They probably have later night activity. I haven't been to a football game, a high school football game in a while, but they're usually pretty busy and there's a lot of people and a lot of noise. Nursery schools, daycare centers, by definition, some of these uses have to have outdoor play areas. That's just required. Listening to children be outdoors is a normal residential neighborhood type of a thing. So I just would, point that out, that when a use is included in the code as permitted, the code is essentially saying that these uses are consistent with our zoning, that the normal aspects of that use are in harmony with the zoning. So we do have to meet the requirements of the conditional use permit. I think we have done so. I've done it in writing. I'd be happy to go through them. There's a whole long list of them. But we're not making any physical changes to the property. So, we have the access isn't changing, the building isn't changing, we're not building any new cabins. We're essentially just increasing the number of children permitted at the camp. And then asking for, I think, what are some really reasonable relief from some conditions, which I'm not really sure what the motivation for including them, but some of those conditions are just really not appropriate. They really treat the India Community Center different than other similar types of camps, churches, organizations in the town. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any, or provide you with more information.
Okay, thank you. Is the intent to have 144 campers?
No, it's 144, includes 30 counselors. So it's 114 plus 30.
114 campers.
Plus 30.
And 30 counselors.
Right.
And the counselors sleep in the cabins with the
Is that
campers?
That's correct? Yes. So that's how we max out our occupancy, and they obviously need the counselors.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
Anyone on the board have any questions about this?
No, so they've, now the fire marshal, so that's all set? You worked that out with the fire
Yeah,
marshal?
my understanding, so Jim Costello left me a voicemail yesterday that the fire marshal was going out there. He did meet with Dr. Comet today. And my understanding is he's satisfied with the materials that were submitted to him. I'd be happy to go through them, but it's really a question of what the applicable regulations are, and the public health law is very clear that it supersedes the state building code, and it's that we meet the occupancy requirements. And we have a permit. We even have an email from the health department clarifying their position on that. So,
is there a renewed? You'd mentioned that you would like some of the aspects of previous conditional use permits reinstated. For example, the ability to have outside groups.
right, that is the only. That's the only one that was done before. I just mentioned it because. As you probably know, if you meet the requirements, unless you can distinguish it, essentially we've met the requirements for that. they don't have any definite plan. It's not like there's a whole line of
People asking
not-for-profits
them to
waiting.
utilize, okay.
Right, but it would be...
That was my question, was there a specific
No,
group in mind?
essentially what it would be, it would be
event?
beneficial to the India Community Center, because they have this great facility, why not make it available? And it's actually a tremendous asset to the public. I mean, I can think that there would be some, local churches who would love to have a weekend retreat, or some kind of a gathering, they would still be subject to the town's noise ordinance, still subject to, the other requirements of the conditional use permit. So the intent is not to do anything more intense or different, just really to make it available to the community.
In the past, they couldn't rent a facility out under the present code, right?
No,
So
they
now
did.
they
They
wanna
had an
rent it
approval
out.
in 2004 to do it, they just never did it. They just never bothered to do it.
Just besides the summer camp, there was nothing ever going on out there?
Outside in the cabins?
Yes.
Well, the India Community Center uses their building all year round for cultural and educational events. They do use the outdoor areas, but the conditional use permit granted to them was expanded to also include the camp and allow construction of these buildings for the camp back in 2002. So yeah, they operate a cultural, educational facility there, and have religious-based
And the 10
camp.
o'clock, you need the 10 o'clock extended to 11 PM because they stay out later during the camp? Is that what you want to do?
No, well, we're extending it really because the 10 o'clock limitation is less than what the town's noise ordinance. I'm not really sure why they were limited to 10 o'clock. They're not planning to then keep the kids out an hour later. It really just gives them, the restriction is that there's no outdoor activity at all after 10 o'clock. So if the adults have to go and clean up, they can't clean up. They technically are restricted beyond what the code regulations are for, for generally across the board in the town.
And after review of all the complaints, I guess, what was their thoughts on that over there at the community center?
I don't think there are any complaints as far as
Is that noise?
I've talked. There was one issue that they had documented a couple years ago with a neighbor. The neighbor, his home happens to be, I believe, 0.2 miles. I think it's over 1,000 feet from the camp. My understanding, I think from Doug, is it might have something to do with the contours of the land or something. But there's no real reason that there should be a noise issue to somebody 1,000 feet away. Nobody else has ever complained. I don't know if the town gets regular complaints from people across the street. I doubt it. To most people, these types of activities are consistent with, you live next to a 15,000 square foot community center with outdoor facilities. It's not an unreasonable, there's going to be activity outdoor, there's going to be something. There's no pool. There's no tennis courts, no ball, there's no basketball, nobody's hearing, bouncing balls or screaming or anything of that nature. So, and a lot of their activities, the nature of this camp is religious, cultural, educational. Yes, kids play outside in the summer, so they are outside in the afternoon, but many of their activities are also held inside the building.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I guess I would say it's very consistent with any other typical kind of use you would find in a residential neighborhood. We have schools, community centers, the Y, camps, rec centers, there's these daycare centers. All of these special permit uses, if you think about the daycare centers in the town, the churches and religious uses in the town, churches and religious uses up to a few years ago, you couldn't even keep them out of a residential neighborhood. You can make some reasonable limitations, but the law doesn't allow substantial intrusion into the operation of religious uses or zoning regulation that unreasonably restricts religious uses. There's a whole body of law on that. I didn't really get into it, but anyway.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. I have 3 slips of paper here for speakers. The first, Robert Gingello. Please come on up.
May I hand these papers to the...
Sure.
That's all right, I'll share
That's okay.
it. I'll share it with
Thank
them.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about the terrible copy. That's the best my copier will do. My name's Robert Gingello. I live at 2201 Monroe, Wayne County Line Road. Well, I pretty much have to say that everything this young lady just spoke, I disagree with. To start with, if you look at the map, well, let me back up. 24 or 5 years ago, I purchased a 20-acre parcel in the town of Penfield. About 4 years after that, I built my home with my wife, my dream home, which is approximately 1,000 foot from the road on this 20-acre parcel for peace and quiet, and we loved it there. What has transpired since then has turned into a nightmare for the month of July. And I have been dealing with the community center for this entire period. I have talked to Andy Servegas till I think Andy Servegas no longer wants to talk to me. I have had the Monroe County Sheriff up to that community center numerous times. I have had policemen in my driveway to verify the noise, and I'm talking 11, 12, 1, 2 in the morning, this entire month of July, and other events that have taken place. I also totally disagree with it hasn't been rented out in the future, and I will give you some facts, police officers that were there for other parties, like anniversary parties, where there were hundreds and hundreds of people, and the parking lots were full, and the parties went on till 3, 4 in the morning. So let me get some of my notes out. Any increase in children would just add to this problem. My wife and I have learned to sleep in July with the windows closed. We bought a white noise machine, and the children are not in bed at 10 o'clock. The reason it went from 11 to 10 was due to me, because I think 10 o'clock's a fair time. A lot of people like to go to bed at 10 o'clock. 11's a little late. I'm 70 years old. I'm retired. I'm looking for peace and quiet. I wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock many times to bugles and horns. This is how the children sometimes wake up the kids. And I don't want to be in summer camp anymore. You know, I'm 70 years old. And in the evenings, at 10 o'clock, the noise doesn't stop always. It does sometimes, but not always. To have a summer camp, if you notice the little map here, my house is 548 feet from the community center. That's pretty darn close. I could hear people talk. The camp is 536 feet from my house. The noise is unbelievable. They do some kind of, like an army would say, the sergeant would say something and the whole platoon would go, "Yes, sir." Well, you get 114 kids that were in the session this year, which is over what they should have had, chanting all at the same time like that, over and over and over for hours. That's very disturbing. I want to relax in my later years of life, and I can't. This has been taken away from me. To have a summer camp this close to a home could possibly be done properly, One, the insides of these buildings should be soundproofed, because when they're in the auditorium, the community center, the auditorium faces, it's on the south wall, which my bedroom is on my north wall. So all the music and everything coming out of that building goes up, and it comes right to my house. And that's all I hear. I mean, the graduation night is the worst. They have 2 sessions, so there's 2 graduations, and those are the worst, because that music and everybody celebrating. I have nothing against any of that, but I don't want to hear it. I don't think anybody here would want to. I don't think anybody here would want their July taken away from them. It's one, we look forward to summer. Well, I can't even have people at my house because of the noise being generated by the children outside. It's just, it's not right. But I want to address, first off, I was also outside and saw children, but I didn't see 114 of them screaming at the top of their lungs. I saw a regular, normal neighborhood. So there's a difference. I want to address, I might have some notes here on other activities that have taken place there. I know it has nothing to do with this, but it was said, and I think I should address it. And I'm sorry, I may not have those notes, but now I will tell you one other thing. Dr. Kamath is sitting here tonight. We've spoke over the years. My last encounter with him, I went there, it was graduation night, there was a lot of noise, and I spoke with him. And we came to an agreement. And he said, if you have a problem, don't call the police anymore. You come up and see me. So he told me graduation, they were going to try to end it at 10 o'clock, because I spoke to him earlier in that day. And 10 o'clock came. Loud noise, 11 o'clock. My wife and I would like to go to bed. Still, it's noisy. So I decided I would go up there. Well, Dr. Kamath is the doctor that's supposed to be on call 24/7 while the camp is on for a doctor. At least that's what I was told by the health department. I've been up there numerous times at night and asked for whoever was in charge, and there were just children. Dr. Kamath never came out if he was there, and I was told he wasn't each time. So I went back that night. He wasn't there. So how am I supposed to resolve this? I had no other way to resolve it, and that particular night, cars were coming in and out with pizza, and the kids were celebrating. They're kids. 11 o'clock's nothing for a kid. Well, 11, 11:30, 12, 1 o'clock is a lot for me. I called the police. I stayed on the premises. The police came. It took them almost 45 minutes to get there. He wasn't a policeman that was familiar with Penfield because they were busy. He came from Pittsburgh. He was kind of upset that he had to travel the distance, wanted to know who I was. He became a little bit upset with me. He said, I just want to talk to the children, you go home. A few days later, I get a notice at my door that I'm no longer able to go up to the community center. I've been banned. So I don't know how to work it out now. I hate to bother the police. The police have other things to do. The center needs to be responsible and go by the rules. The rules are a certain time in the morning, to noise, and off at 10. If they would do that, I think we could get along. But for some reason, and I have tried everything. We're talking years here. I was a young man when I started this. Now I'm an old man. So these are my issues. I want to bring up this one thing. On March 28th of 2015, they say they don't have other activities and they don't have other parties. Officer Charvet was in my driveway where he witnessed the noise coming from the ICC. I didn't even have him go over there. He agreed it was a disturbance. On the 29th, he came back again. This was another event. Now remember, this is in March. There's no summer camp. He witnessed the noise coming from ICC and again agreed it was a disturbance. During the camp hours on July 6th of 15, Officer Bell in my driveway, he definitely said, that's a disturbance. But they also tell me this is a town of Penfield problem. We can't go up there and give children tickets. They go up there and they come back and they say, well, there's nobody there but the children and the counselors. Well, the counselors are children themselves. How could they enforce the law? So basically what it boiled down to over all the years is it's a town of Penfield problem. And the police that do go there have told me, well, this is the problem spot of Penfield. We're all aware of it. I could go on, but I'm not going to waste everybody's time. And I want you to know that this is literally ruining my life. What was said here, I have to disagree with all of it. That's basically my feelings on this, and any addition would be absolutely horrible for me. And when they're talking on actually renting this facility to other camps and things like that, should a summer camp be 560 feet from my house? I mean, I know it's there, and I think it could work. Soundproofing, noise barriers, these are things that could cut down that noise, because that's what I'm getting. I appreciate the time, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? I'll be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. Okay. We have Leonard Gingello.
Good evening, Board. My name is Leonard Gingello. I live at 249 Monroe Wayne County Line Road. I'm the brother of Robert, who just spoke. I live to the south of him, so I'm approximately 2,000 feet from the center as well as the camps. The elevation of my home is a little bit lower than my brother's. Their community center is on a hill. The camps are a little lower on the back side of the hill. So I'm somewhat shielded from that, clearly not as close as my brother. Like I say, I'm another 1,000 feet away, or 1,500. And I hear the noise. I have heard noise. I have observed the children being on the top of the community center late at night, past 11 o'clock. Their firework display is well past 10 o'clock at night. It's very disturbing. We too close our windows. I don't have a white machine, but I sleep with a fan. And during the day, we hear the noise. Sometimes the drums are quite loud. The bugles in the morning are bad. And I'm 2,000 feet away. So to say that this is consistent with the neighborhood and the residential area, which this is just not true. With respect to the attorney, she doesn't live there. She doesn't have to deal with it every day. It is very, very disruptive. It has ruined my dream home as my brother. And I have never complained. I've seen my brother and his wife be very disturbed by this to the point they want to sell. And I know it's their dream home that they saved a lifetime for. It is just not consistent with the nature of that neighborhood. Adding more campers will just make it worse. The supervision is absolutely horrible there. In the summer this year, I had 3 situations where there were teenagers in my backyard. They walked some 2,000 feet. The back of my yard slopes down to a woods. I yelled down to them. It's pretty hard to walk all the way down and back. And twice they ran back. One time, the young man gestured, improperly to me and laughed and went in my woods. I have no idea what he did in the woods. So the consistent nature of what goes on there is just terrible for the neighborhood. I think the neighbors across the street are probably shielded from the sound because, again, it's up on a hill and it goes down, so I don't believe they may hear that. Again, it is very disruptive. Adding to that problem will just make things worse for my brother and I and other neighbors. It's a terrible situation. I heard the discussions around the fire marshal and space requirements and so forth. I know that when I built my home, fire suppression was a concern. I have a pond that would be used for the fire department because of the setback in my home. I would ask the board to review that to see if there's proper, the last thing we'd want to see is one of those fires burn down one of those camps and, there'd be a problem with the children, right? So I'd ask the board to look at that and make sure that it's consistent with regulations. I've read the noise ordinance. It's not only at 11 o'clock, but it also talks about the sound not going farther than 50 feet of the border between the hours of 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. Well, this isn't normal sound, and I will respect that children play and they make noise, and that's okay. But when it's excessive and it's hours after hours of drum beats, that's excessive. It's not 50 feet past, it's 2,000 feet past. It's just terrible. My guests wonder what it is if I try to go on the deck. And it is just a horrendous situation. Adding to the number of people there, giving it to organizations who knows what the supervision will be. If it's any measure, the supervision that there is now is not. They're children, they're 18-year-old counselors that are watching these kids. Kids will be kids. They need to be supervised, and that sound has to be less. I'm sorry, was there a comment, sir? Oh, okay. Any questions from the board?
At the moment, no. I appreciate the comments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Bill Wendland? Welcome back.
Good evening again to the board. Appreciate the chance. Personally, I look fondly on an ethnic group that attempts to pass on their cultural heritage. I think that's a wonderful thing.
You're 2181?
2181 County Line Road. My property is 0 inches on my north border, and Dr. Kamat's border is south border. Same. Adjacent, okay? There was a time a few years back, and I'm a little hazy on the time blocks, but I had small grandchildren at my home, and all of a sudden they started screaming. And because of aerial fireworks with big boomers. And so I went up there, and I believe it was Dr. Kamat that I spoke to. He can correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, and I mentioned what was happening, and I said it would be very nice on a part of the organization to alert the families that have been, I've been living there 47 years, that this happening was going to be. Just put a notice in everybody's mailbox, if that's legal with the post office, I don't know. But somehow let the neighborhood know that this special thing is going to happen. And I got a very positive response. And so far, that type of thing hasn't come to my attention. Okay? What has come to my attention, and this is based on an assumption on my part, but I think perhaps the board of directors of the Indian Center may change. I don't know that for a fact. But if it does change, where there was awareness, then new people come in as board of directors, certain things don't get carried on. That's an assumption on my part. I don't know. I don't know if the same directors stay there year after year forever. Anyway, they went through a upgrading. They upgraded roof with the cells that generate electricity. What am I looking for?
Solar panels?
Solar cells, yes, thank you. Siding was put on. They had expansion for storage on a portion of the building. And in that process, different lights were put there. And this is, I'd like to speak to that. That's one main reason I'm here, the lights. They spill over to the whole neighborhood rather than the lights that would wash down the side of the building without spilling over to the whole neighborhood. And the neighborhood is used to people sitting out after dark, admiring the stars and whatever. So I hope that that portion can be corrected. Always had pretty good cooperation before. Also, the light on the sign down on the road, instead of being directed or focused onto the sign, it washes out onto the road. And I'm 83 years old, and I know that I don't get along with lights that well anymore, but it is bothersome. If you could correct that, that would help. Just get that thing turned from both north and south. And the lights, my bedroom's on the north side, so the lights come in. And if there happens to be certain times where the breeze is blowing, I get things dancing all over my walls. Once in a while it gets a little scary. But so if some attention can be given to the lights, that would be very much appreciated. I think that's it for now. Thank you for the chance.
Thank you very much.
May I approach the board?
Sure, come on up.
That's yours.
As you review this proposal, I'd ask the board to look at the topography of the area. Bill's home is at the road level, where my brother and mine, to some extent, is higher, more in line with the community center and the camps. So Bill's discussion around lights is appropriate for him. The sound issue may not be an issue for him because the community center is quite high. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone? Sure.
The sheets that I passed out show the session 1 and session 2 activities for the day. And the children, as you see, wake up at 6:30. And then that plans their whole day by this schedule. But I want to bring your attention to 10 o'clock on that chart. 10 o'clock to midnight is what they call night patrol. And then it's lights out for the counselors at midnight. It kind of contradicts what this young lady told us, that they're all put down by 9:30, 10 o'clock. And that's actually the hours where I have my biggest problem. And what the counselors seem to do, and I've walked across Mr. Wentworth's property many times, which butts up to the parking lot, where the counselors' kids walk the path from the camp to the parking lot at the community center, and they sit in the corner with their big radios and they party. Okay? So And without any supervision from anybody else there, what's to say they're going to go in at 12 like the schedule shows us? Because they don't. And many times at 1:30, 2 o'clock. Unfortunately, I don't sleep that well. So if I wake up in the middle of the night at 1 o'clock to this noise, and this is with the windows closed and a noise machine, I can't get back to sleep. So my wife and I are up all night long. And that's not, no one here would want that. And that's what I have. And I have tried to work it out with Dr. Kamath. And I just wanted to pass that on to you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes, come on up. Sure.
Thank you for the opportunity to respond. My name is Padmanabh Kamath. I'm the president of the Hindu Heritage Summer Camp. I'm also director of special events at India Community Center. Many of the noise problems that were brought to our attention, we have addressed them. The last complaint that we have heard of, what the gentleman referred to, was March 28, 2015, more than 2 years ago. And we make sure after 10 p.m., because the 10 p.m. was the time given, there is no loud music inside the main hall, and we cut it down, and by 10:15, 10:30, all the activities are over usually, except maybe New Year's Eve party. That's the only time it may go up to midnight. Okay. There were a lot of false accusations made. First of all, we have never had parties which go till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. This was years ago, and there were parties maybe up to midnight. And the point made about children going down with the radio on. Our children do not have radios. They are not allowed to have any outdoor music. None of that happens at the camp. The activity at 10 o'clock, as the group, the counselor, what's called group sharing, that takes place inside the main building for the older campers, 14, 15-year-old, and that finishes around 10, 10:15, and they go, and they have been told repeatedly by us, and they follow this, I know for sure. They don't make any noise on their way down. It used to be a problem years ago. I'm not denying that there were occasions on the last day especially and all that, where children used to be noisy on the last day of the camp, because there is the last day, there everybody is going home next day. But those type of incidents do not happen. And we have been very sensitive to the complaints of Mr. Gingelo, and so we have addressed those issues. And we keep emphasizing to the children that after 10, they should be very careful when they go down, if they're going down to the campsite, the older kids. The younger ones are sent down 9:15, they go down. The older ones go at about 10 o'clock. And from 11 p.m. till 3 a.m., we have a security guard on premises sitting there, making sure none of the kids are outside the cabins. Nobody. Because if they are there, we get the report. The so-called night patrol, our directors, they walk around just to make sure everybody is inside the cabins. That is the night patrol. It's not that they are going there to make noise. So many of these allegations, while it may have happened occasionally in the past, they don't happen anymore. Because we want to make sure we are good neighbors. And so we have addressed these issues. Okay, I wanted to be aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you. You can come up. I don't want this to get into back and forth. I mean, I've heard your statements. I've heard their statements. Come on up.
I'll admit what Dr. Kamath said, it is getting better, but it hasn't been corrected. My question would be, if Dr. Kamath is not there on the premise, how does he know those things aren't happening? He'll deny that there were fireworks, yet there's 3 of us here tonight that witnessed those, and they didn't just happen one year. And I got to tell you, they're as good a firework display as the town of Penfield puts on. I don't know if they ever got a permit for that. I'm sure there wasn't a fire truck up there in case, but there were fireworks. It has gotten better. It could get even more better. It could be soundproofed, noise barriers, but the noise does exist. But if he is not there, how could he make statements? I spoke with Sue at the Monroe County, Lee Houston at the Health Department. And Dr. Kamath is the gentleman that's supposed to be there for the whole month of July, 24/7. This is what I was told. I have never yet encountered him any of the evenings I've gone up there. So that tells me that all these children are without a doctor that's a physician that should be there in case there's an emergency. I spoke with Sue, Monroe County Records. She's the one that you can call, and she could give you all the police reports. I'll close with one other thing. One of the worst events that took place, if these children are all in bed at 9:30, was at 2 o'clock in the morning, and a police officer went to this. I heard a lot of singing. This was years ago. The children were on the roof of the community center, singing at the top of their lungs. And the police officer that came to my house heard it, verified it, went over there. There was no one else there in charge except for these children. And he told them that he would ticket them and notify the town of Penfield if they didn't stop, and he got them down from the roof. He came back to my residence and to tell me this. So I knew that why they were up on the roof. He said they were singing toward your house. In other words, they were trying to get back at me a little bit, maybe. So if you're not there, you can't say these things didn't happen. I lived there. I know what happens there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that what I need to, oh, by the way, I have an aerial if you're interested to see where the neighbors are. You'll see there's substantial distance and quite a bit of buffering. If you're interested, I'm happy to just give you a copy. I believe your home, and I think is this one, correct?
My eyes aren't big.
I believe this is your home here.
This is my home, yes.
And is this the other gentleman that was up the other road here?
Yeah, this would be, no, he would be here, he's out of here.
And then you put the next one, the third gentleman over here.
Yes, he's down below.
Okay.
I'm at the same elevation though as the community center.
So these are the cabins. This is their outdoor area that they mostly use. A lot of the activities are inside the building. This is
Mr.
Tom's
Gingella's.
brother's house is over here somewhere, and there's a neighbor up in the front. So I think my client feels that they do a good job running this camp. Clearly, my understanding from the town is Mr. Gingella was the only person who has ever raised any complaints, and I don't think that they thought that there were, well, I shouldn't speak. I'm not sure how many there were, but it didn't sound like there were very many. But I bring you back to, it doesn't sound like he had any complaints about he seemed to be okay with the camp. His complaints seemed to be, middle of the night types of things that my client says don't happen anymore. At the end of the day, this board issues conditional use permits. we are required to comply with the town code, with the public health law. There is town code enforcement. I think the one time the police officer came out and met Dr. Kamat out there, he said there really wasn't an issue, but certainly the town, if there were fireworks, the town was certainly, it would be kind of hard to miss if it's that type of a display, but the town has code enforcement, you have a fire marshal. Certainly things like lighting on the sign and compliance things, those are all within the realm of the town to review if there is some kind of problem. Certainly things like that can be fixed. I think I'm confident that the camp is run, they've never had a problem with the health department. They have a good relationship with the health department. The health department was actually quite cooperative. I forgot the lady's name, but she was very cooperative and wrote a very nice email, which was forwarded to the fire marshal. They comply with all the regulations for running a camp. They are written up in the New York Times as a top-notch camp. They have a national reputation. They've been recognized as really a very high-quality camp. I think I could probably give you an article, if I can just find where I put it, right from the New York Times. Very impressive operation. They are required to comply with the permit for their operation. The town does not, oversee permits. I don't think that they are different than any other camp in the town, any other religious use in the town, whether it's, another church. I don't think they're different than any other community center in the town. And they are obligated to comply not only with the town code, but with the requirements of the conditional use permit. And this board is not here to rewrite the town code. It is a conditional use permit, meaning that this kind of a use is recognized as consistent with the zoning. We certainly are respectful that we have a couple neighbors with a couple issues. It sounds like our immediate neighbor on the street, his issues have to do with lighting and things like that, which it's the first we've heard of it. We certainly will look into it. Mr., I don't want to pronounce wrong, Giangello? Thank you, sorry. And his brother, I certainly respect that they've had issues in the past. They've been a long time. I think that the camp does everything they can to operate a quality operation. They don't they don't have a problem with campers on the roof. They don't allow campers on the roof of the building. That's just crazy. So, but again, we're subject to the requirements of the conditional use permit. We've already met those requirements before. We're really only here for some very minor modifications, the most significant being that they need to increase the number to meet the occupancy that the cabins can actually accommodate, because this camp is so incredibly successful and popular. It's a top-notch camp. So with that, I certainly, if you have questions for us, or if there's anything that we can do to satisfy the board or answer any of your questions, I just don't know where we're at, and I want to make sure that we do provide you with the assurances you need, because it's not beneficial to the India Community Center, or their camp program to have any kind of issues. They've had no, they've had no issues with their permit. They have a great reputation. They run a top-notch operation. It would be very damaging to them, obviously, if they had, the kinds of issues that are being raised.
The next step is we review this in our work session, and probably be making a decision in the next few weeks on the conditional use permit.
Okay, so you don't plan to make a decision tonight? Okay.
Probably not. We
Okay.
normally don't make, very rarely do we make a decision on this the night that we hear a public hearing.
Sure. If you require any information, I think, if not Doug, Jim Costello, Zach, they know where to reach us. We'd be happy to provide you with any other information. Clearly, it's unfortunate that we have a neighbor with some concerns, but, we want to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
The India Community Center has been there for a long time. The community centers, religious use, as I said, are very typical and acceptable in residential neighborhoods, and they do have, outdoor uses, and they do have kids, and there are things that come with that. But we certainly want to be a good neighbor, and if there are questions or thoughts the town has, please feel free to pass that along to us, through the staff.
Okay.
We'd be happy to address them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
For your comments. You have one final comment, sir? Come on up.
Thank you for just a few seconds. I was remiss, and because the sound was already presented, I didn't get into that, but perhaps I should have. And the sound is irritating, okay? Also, human beings, when we're successful, we intend to feel there's a need to expand. And that's a concern. This lady mentioned she wants to bring in, during the week, year-round, this organization, that organization, some other organization. That should be looked at very carefully. We were there a long time before the center. Have to correct you on that. Okay? Anyway, thank you for your time.
Sure, thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. We will take all the comments under review and call this hearing closed.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
So I read the excerpt from the applicant's engineer about their traffic counts. Did you see that, did they give you a TIS?
Yeah, it was.
Did you review it?
Yes, I did. There was a traffic study done. You know, with 16 lots, it was pretty minimal as far as the number of AM and PM peak.
But did they discuss the
No.
history of the area?
No, they didn't. It was basically just these number of lots are going to produce this much traffic.
Okay.
So they didn't really go into the what does that do with Creek Street? What are the, you know, delays and stuff like that as far as Creek Street and the lighting or the light timing and stuff like that for Browncroft and Blossom and
Clearly, that was a pretty common theme with the neighbors that they're really struggling with traffic in that area. Not that
I think
16
that
additional
has
lots
to-
would have that big of an impact.
It's a common thing with any north-south road in the town of Penfield that goes to either Atlantic Ave or to 441.
Especially at Rush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the Creek, Blossom, Browncroft intersection a failing intersection?
I don't know that. I mean, it's all controlled by the county, so the county usually, you know, does traffic counts and you know, stuff like that. So I don't know what their thoughts are on. I haven't seen what the county has even said about the traffic study that was provided.
And
So
if it backs up to Ember, which he said it did, that's a,
it's
what is that,
pretty
like a mile?
yeah.
That's a ways.
I can believe that because that's an awfully, on Atlantic, that's a fairly, that light stays green and then changes back fairly quick.
Well, remember, everybody
So
to
it's
the
not
north.
long green, it's not Creek Street.
Your options are Creek Street or
Correct.
Empire Boulevard, so
right.
Yeah.
a lot of traffic comes
Between the
down.
two.
So no wonder it cues back, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the state probably has obviously the priority over the
Sure.
county's roads, so they're gonna get the longer green time, being a four lane where Creek is just a 2 lane.
Right. So what do we want to put in this letter?
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
There's nothing they can do to address the intersection.
no, they have no control over
16
that.
lot.
What's everybody feel about this, let me go back to some of the notes. Well, the divided,
The split entrance?
I know that the highway department likes no split entrances and they like a big giant thing of asphalt in a cul-de-sac, if we even allow a cul-de-sac, because they want to plow nice. But when you actually see somebody who takes care of, you know, a nicely landscaped island in the middle of a cul-de-sac, or a boulevard look, you know, entryway, to me, that's a nice feature that's add some class to a neighborhood.
For a neighborhood of
That's
this
my
ilk,
opinion.
we could ask them
And I know
to
that my
create an
street's never going to be
HOA
plowed again. Because I just said that.
specifically to manage those things.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
You could ask them to create a homeowners association for the specific purpose of
Maintaining those.
maintaining those features.
Mhm.
Well, on the entrance and the egress there, where they want to do a split, exiting, I couldn't get out of the detail. Are they proposing a 2-lane discharge?
I think they're
northbound
looking
and
at-
to southbound? 'Cause
That's what they said.
Yeah.
Okay, well, he said they talked, I didn't know if he was, to me, it doesn't look like any wider than when you go in the entrance.
I would agree with you there.
So I don't know if that's 1 lane or 2 lanes, but it should be northbound and southbound, because if it's 1 lane and I want to go north and everyone else is going south,
You're
I'm
waiting
going to sit
forever.
there for 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
So just for the people in the, it doesn't help the intersection, obviously, but it would help people who live there.
Yeah, personally, I'd be amenable to the 2-lane. Now, how does that screw up, again, back to the plowing and so on? You got a north and a southbound lane only there. Does that create a major hassle?
It could be an extra pass that the truck has to do in order to fully clean.
Mhm.
But if there's an HO, well, yeah,
HOA wouldn't cover plowing.
no,
Not on the,
it'd be a dedicated road.
I think we asked staff to prepare a letter that documents the kinds of comments that we got tonight from the public.
Yep.
And the kinds of issues that were raised there, and some of the things that they said that they would be willing to do. I mean, I know Mascot, they do a very nice job. I think this is the first time I can ever remember a developer saying that they're willing to go in and do deadwood management
Yeah,
in an
that's
existing heavily
unusual.
forested area. That's pretty extensive work.
Yeah.
Tree preservation plan for a lot like this probably is.
yeah,
Mhm.
that was one of the folks that commented brought that up, yeah.
We will be sending it to the Conservation Board for review.
Okay, and I'm sure
We'll
they'll
be assigning it
mention
at our
that.
November meeting.
And they're gonna do a waiver for Creek Street and one side of the development for a sidewalk waiver. If I read their application
so.
correctly.
Yeah.
I guess what's the board's thoughts
On sidewalks and
Yeah.
inside it.
Yeah,
I'm somewhat ambivalent. It's not a big street, probably
To
won't be
me-
that busy.
I live in a neighborhood with no sidewalks and I like it.
You
It's
like
not that-
having no
I
sidewalk?
like, yeah, for 16 houses, you really don't.
Yeah.
There's more houses in my development and it's not an issue. I don't want sidewalks.
Town has a sidewalk policy, I
I
think we
know.
need to
Yeah.
honor that. I
Well,
think at
yeah,
least
they can
once
go
a week. And in
towards-
fact, the same
they-
thing happened with Mascot's last application for that subdivision off of Baird Road. They asked for a waiver for one side, and we granted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, they can do what they want to do for that.
Creek Street, I'm not so sure about. I don't know. I have to drive by there again.
Well, they have to put it on Creek Street, I would assume. I don't see that
They're
being
gonna ask for a
waived.
waiver for, I think is what they said though.
I mean, our sidewalk policy is anything west of
Right.
250 is that we require, frontage.
Yeah.
And, it's you have a development that's going in and there's the potential to have, a sidewalk installed for, to help bring residents further down to, Browncroft, but
Yep.
it's up to the board on.
I agree. Can we have
Well, I took a lot of good notes, I can type those up and send them to you tomorrow.
Okay.
And,
What about this, the guy who suggested curving the road? I mean,
Oh, with the water flow.
The velocity of the water flow coming
Yeah,
from a 40
so there's
foot.
not-
It's easy to design a road
Catch basin.
with catch basins and gutters that will
Slow it down, yeah.
flow the water in the direction we want and capture it before it hits Creek Street. They can't dump it onto Creek Street anyhow. So,
Okay, and then the lady who thinks that they put a flag on her property, my guess is that
Probably
is
just
a
a
real
boundary marker.
surveyor.
Yeah.
probably just a ribbon indicating that that's,
Or it's just to give the surveyor a reference point that the property corner is somewhere around there. I mean, it's...
Yeah, sometimes people are, I mean, properties that have been around for that long,
Right.
it could very well be that she actually owns less than she thinks she owns.
It very well could be.
Especially with a lot like
but,
Yeah.
you know,
some acres.
John's a licensed land surveyor, the applicant's consultant, so he
Yeah,
would not have prepared that map if he didn't have good mapping
Correct.
to get there.
That would be
She
my
did,
guess.
she did, however, bring up something interesting. They talked about, you know, their desire to meet with the neighborhood and to maintain as many trees as possible and maintain buffering. She brought up the fact that there is no natural buffering at the back of her property. So maybe that's one of the things that we asked them to describe for the board in their response, you know, how they might provide some buffering for those neighbors that don't have natural treed buffering.
I can appreciate what you're saying with that. I moved into my property in 1993. There were no trees. I planted trees on my property. My neighbors have all benefited from the expense that I incurred putting up. I wanted privacy. They didn't really care whether I had privacy. They were there before me. So there is a two-sided coin in my mind on that whose burden is it to create privacy in a residential neighborhood? Okay, I've had the benefit of 30 years of living with nobody in my backyard, but I'm not paying taxes on that parcel that I've gotten the benefit for. Someone else has paid the taxes on that. And now all of a sudden that person who has paid the taxes all those years decides, hey, you know what, I'm thinking I want to sell this to a builder and put up some houses. So whose responsibility is it?
We've had
I want to be
we've had
careful.
this discussion
yes.
before, but in this case, the applicant did indicate that they're specifically looking to maintain buffers, that they've heard some comments from some of the
Correct.
neighbors. So if they're going out of their way to maintain buffers for some of the neighbors, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask them to address buffering.
What's your
for-
plan? It's fine. Fine. I've spoken my piece.
On that rear property, if you look at the elevations, her line is 10 foot above the grade around the house.
Was she
Yeah,
lot
but those-
55 or
But
56?
those houses, the peaks of those houses are gonna be
I believe
30
she was
feet tall. so
55.
55.
It's gonna be different when you build big homes in there
Oh,
with.
true,
roof
but
lines.
it's not going to be a straight shot.
The house will be buffering half.
Okay.
Seriously, if you want panels laid on.
Pond, retention, detention, does it seem close to the road, or is it just, I mean, it's close to the right of way, so it's not right up against the road, but it's pretty close.
That's going to be dedicated to the town, that lot?
I think so, yeah.
Does the town want that? In the past, they've said, no, they don't want the headache. They don't want the liability.
But then somebody has to maintain the thing.
True.
Yeah.
HOA.
So, but we can
We've had
create, and
difficulty
that
chasing
can
after
be,
people
Right.
where the subdivision is responsible for, it's just like monument signs and all kinds of other things. We've had some of those that we looked at up off of the 250 corridor up near State Road, remember, a few years ago. So you're almost better off having the town having access to it and maintenance.
yeah, that's,
This would provide the ease of access to it and not have to go through backyards and stuff like that. It's also, you know, at the low point, so it makes sense.
no, it
to
makes
have
sense
there.
to where it is.
I have
But the levy and
I have
tax-
that they said the proposed pond will be on an 18th lot. or maybe on an 18th lot in a special improvement district would be created.
Would they levy a tax for those homeowners to maintain the pond, the money?
Yeah, we
That's how
do
you
special
typically do it,
improvement
right?
tax.
That's currently what they do at Sparrow Point.
Okay.
Which is, we do a special improvement district, which
Okay.
is funds that they
That's what I
pay
thought.
into that goes to maintain like the stormwater facilities
Okay.
are there.
But I guess I do have a question on what's the board's thoughts about actually like having the landscape cul-de-sac? Is that something that you like, or, I mean, like you said, AJ, that the town is maintenance, it comes down to maintenance. So, you know, I know we talked about an HOA, but sometimes they've deeded it over to one of the lots, which then...
My complaint session, from my personal, whether it's rational or irrational, I go to communities around the country and I see beautifully landscaped bridges, sides of roads, medians. I see things that seem to be very well taken care of. I drive to and from work on 441 every day, and it drives me crazy how horrible it looks. When I come home, when I go to work, it's this ugly, trash-looking place, and I know that I'm paying higher taxes than all those other communities that have the beautiful landscape stuff. So from a theoretical standpoint, I love the idea of a landscaped island in the middle of the cul-de-sac because I think it's a beautiful community, you know, neighborhood amenity. That said,
It's also a sustainability feature. It's less impervious surface. You know, recharges groundwater. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it besides the fact that, you know, if it's well designed and well planned and well maintained, it's a lot better than looking at asphalt.
I'm just trying to get a general consensus on what...
I like the landscape in the center of the cul-de-sac.
Most builders would not offer to do this.
Right.
They'd want to pave it and be done with it.
right. Sure. So my personal opinion was I like the idea of it. I do.
How much more maintenance is it really? Is it just snow plowing?
Well, it comes down to, you know, mowing it or whatever is located in the center of it. You
Why would the
know,
town be responsible for that? We talked about an HOA to maintain that and
right.
Or there's
When you
some, a lot
plow
of
it,
times
there's no
a
place to
special
store
tax district
snow.
or something that's
Yeah.
created for,
so it, you know,
Yeah, snow storage. is
snow
much
storage becomes an issue with trying to plow
Especially
it.
if it becomes planted with trees or other things that restrict our ability
The
to
salt
use
will-
there in the wintertime.
You know, they have to be salt tolerant plants.
So maybe that's a good thing to put in our response letter, that the challenge
yeah,
of
we like the
designing-
idea, however, these are the
challenge of
challenges involved in
providing
that.
some snow
I
storage.
agree with you
and
100% on that.
some less maintenance intensive plant materials that would be resistant to chlorides and
Yeah, let's put that in the letter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You in, chief?
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah, highway department will love it.
What are your thoughts on the layout of the neighborhood? PRC had talked about the layout of lot 16. It is a tighter lot, especially with regards to the neighbors. The two-story brick house that currently exists on the lot.
And the front of that faces
Creek Street.
Creek, so it's the side setback that they're,
but it's almost 3/4 of an acre. 30,000 square feet.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it either.
Yeah.
I mean, 30,000 square feet is, it's 30,000 square feet. And I'd much rather have the driveway on the cul-de-sac than on Creek Street.
Yeah, exactly. There's no setback issue that I can see.
No.
You'd have a hard time getting a curb cut off of Creek Street anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, I know that right by us, FedEx Development, they have that lot right on Watson Road, and it's vacant still. I mean, it's been on the market for 20 years. So, all of a sudden you got that, and it's fronting on Creek, and the driveway's on Creek, and it'd be an issue, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think kudos to the way that they laid this out and not tried to cram.
What I thought was
more
interesting
lots.
was the staggered setbacks.
Yeah.
So that the houses on the it looks like a natural flow as you drive
I'd
through.
like to see a little staggering on the north side of the road as well. They've got the depth
Possibly.
to do it.
They do.
Well, again, you're looking at a rectangle box.
True, he did say that these are generic cookie cutter, oversized
What do you
footprints.
say, they're
3,600 square foot apiece, so if he's building two-story homes, that's a big house.
Expensive homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, one man's over 2 acres. Lot. 7.
All right, what's everybody else feel about that? I'm ambivalent
with
at best. I'm more, I like on the south side because of the teardrop cul-de-sac. Now, that's another thing, that teardrop okay, or do we have the regular, I don't even know what the other one's called.
Lollipop.
Lollipop? Really? Okay. Do we like the lollipop or the teardrop?
I think he just invented a new design term.
My daughter uses that term.
Oh, so she did, so you give her credit. See, on TV, everything, I mean, that's great.
Well, we don't have to work out every detail sitting here. I think the idea is that we're all in favor of advancing this another notch, and make a motion to authorize staff to prepare a letter, like we discussed. I'll give you some written comments tomorrow, and you can get a
Let it go.
draft letter out for.
Okay? So we got,
I would like to add on detention versus retention. Anytime we can eliminate standing water if the design.
That's really a matter of their
There's
stormwater
DEC
plan.
requirements on detaining for so long.
If they can.
Right.
If it's feasible, if they can.
And on a site this steep, not likely.
You don't think
There is probably one thing that we should address that one of the neighbors brought up, and that is protection. This comes up in every community about protection around ponds. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a child that died in a pond in the town of Brighton 6 or 7 years ago. And in that particular case, the neighbors complained they put a fence up. The fence was opaque, so the parents couldn't see when the kids climbed over the fence or got under or around the fence. And the kid got back there and didn't know how to swim and died. Besides the fact that we don't want to fence in all of our natural features. A lot of communities ask you to put a split rail fence around there, so there's just a little bit of a visual barrier. Yeah, so the kids, kind of see that out of the corner of their eye, that that's not a place that they should be wandering into. And
We
that
haven't
might-
done that this far, right? For
No.
anything.
No,
I don't think we should.
No, but
I don't think we should.
We don't normally have, actually, that's not true. Mascot's
a
last
lot of-
project on Baird Road had.
we had right along,
It's been, well, it's not there.
Yeah, right.
It's
They
no-
moved that?
Well, I don't know if they ever installed it.
Yeah.
There's no fence
Right.
there.
No, not the fence, the pond.
Oh,
Well, the pond's
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Well, I
There's
know
no
we did
fence.
the Galvin property in Shoecroft, there was a large regional storm water retention facility there. And we talked about a fence around that, and I believe the fire department came back, emergency responders, and said they don't like fences. because
They
it
don't like
impedes them.
fences.
They don't like fences.
And I don't
It
think I'm
impedes them for the
in favor of
rescue, so
either.
they didn't want a fence.
I go back to, we walked Chimney Bluff State Park a couple weeks ago, and, talk about a dangerous place to walk. Should we demand a fence around Chimney Bluffs or Letchworth or something?
Should have seen it 40 years ago.
I guess my point is, we can get to a point where we should all be living in little bubbles, and I think that there's certainly reasonable care taken, but living is dangerous.
Put that in the letter.
Moving on to H.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that they have a fence or not have a fence, but it was
Bring it up
brought
for
up.
Okay, so no, let's move on.
All right, so we have a motion to send a letter, or draft a letter, and we have a second. Anything else that you need in this?
No, I
Okay.
think we're good.
Hetzke.
Aye.
Bastian. Burton.
Aye.
Canower.
Aye.
Tidings.
Okay. Oh, the arena thing. Is there any showstoppers here with this thing?
Is this the re-subdivision?
Yes, so they originally subdivided this at the end of 2014. At the time that we did that, we noted that we don't allow two single-family structures on a single property. So it was written into the resolution that they would only use this for business purposes. At the time, they proposed it was going to be part of the construction office while they built their current home and horse barn facility, indoor track facility. And they're looking to resplit that up so that it comes more into compliance with the two homes being on two separate parcels, although he did indicate that they were interested in continuing to run the business side of it from that.
So in effect, we have a physical structure that could be a primary use residence, right? But it's not actually being used as a
Residence. We restricted that
residence.
use when they made it so that there was two single-family structures on the one parcel. Now
So
that
they couldn't use it as a
They couldn't
house.
use it as a house. Now they want to subdivide it back out so it could be used as a house again because it'll be on its own tax parcel. So it'll be two single-family homes on two single-family lots.
Even though the intent is to still use it as
Yeah,
an office building.
yeah.
If they wanted to, they could turn it into a residential building, sell it, rent it, whatever they want, it's their property.
Yep.
This is a no-brainer. I move to approve.
Well, first would be the Part 2A.
Move to approve the
Oh, you gotta be quick.
That was Jim and Bill?
Usurping his glory here.
The second year.
Okay, it was moved by Burton, seconded by Bastian.
This is the EAF.
The EAF,
Yes,
yes.
this is for the EA.
Okay. Hetzke.
Aye.
Bastian.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Canower.
Aye.
Tidings.
I move to approve the resolution.
Good.
I'm sorry, I did.
So Bastian moved it, let's see if Burton seconds,
Oh.
or if he's wounded now.
Leave it to the chief.
I'll second.
Okay.
Hetzke.
Aye.
Bastian.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Canower.
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Application 3,
Okay,
Kitopia. So the concerns noted in the sketch letter were the size of the building, design materials, the hour of operation, anticipated traffic. Is the board satisfied with the answers they received in the hearing?
I think they did a very nice job of trying to give us not only good responses to all those comments, but a very complete, at this stage, application. I think the architectural features and coloring are nice. I don't have any issue with this one at all. I would be very happy to move to draft a approval resolution for this.
Well, one of the things we would look at doing before that is the board interested in issuing a letter of support to the zoning
Yes,
board?
to the zoning board,
Yes.
yes.
As they're seeking 4 variances right now, one for less setback, one for less parking, one for the greater building area, and one for less buffer to the residential properties.
So it's been tabled since August 10th.
I believe so, yes.
And really,
I'm in favor of
the
doing
constraints
that.
on the site really lend themselves well to those 4
Yeah,
variances.
I agree.
Yeah, they
Yep,
really-
Anybody
so
have
we'll
an
do a
issue
vote
with
for
that?
that, so.
Bob?
I don't.
Terry?
Okay, so I move to have staff send a letter on behalf of the planning board to the zoning board indicating our support of the granting of those 4 variances.
Second.
Okay, Hetzke.
Aye.
Bastian.
Aye.
Burden.
Aye.
Canower.
Aye.
Tidings.
Okay, and then maybe get started on a draft approval.
Okay.
You had an interesting comment at the end on that one, Jim, about their application to the, is it Child and Family
Child and Family
Oh, yeah.
Services. Yes.
So the draft resolution would have to be conditional on,
Well, that's one of the things that I was talking to Mike about earlier, is just, you know, because the state agency has jurisdiction over some elements of design and operation, they could in fact impose something that we might have wanted to weigh in on. So I think it's absolutely appropriate to have them give us not a sample, but actually an application filled out to the best of their ability at this point in time, so that at least, you know, we can look it over and see if there's any surprises that.
Sure.
would that hold them up, or would you want to?
No, this is not something that I'm suggesting that they would submit.
Oh, so it's just knowledge you want to?
Yes,
Okay.
I think it's something we should have in the public record.
Okay. So today we received updated site plans and responses to PRC comments. We'll get that to the board for their review.
We got it.
You got them? Okay.
Allison was very diligent today.
What is the board's thought on the sidewalks?
The front sidewalk?
Yeah, is it the building to both Penwood Park and to Creek
South.
Street?
I think they should put it in. It's a residential neighborhood. Again, the town's got a sidewalk policy. You know, you've got kids that might be coming down, catching buses or whatever. I think they should.
I would agree that,
Okay, so the board would like to see sidewalk along the frontage of Penwood? At least to the property line?
Yeah.
To-
and
Okay.
on Creek, is it on Creek? They have it.
Yeah, they have it on Creek already.
And what about
And they're bringing a
Southern
sidewalk up to the
Southern Drive's a
building.
private road, so.
Right. So, but, you know, we just want to get the board's thoughts on, you know, providing a sidewalk along the frontage here that would, you know, probably terminate at the property line, but it would allow any residential, you know, use of the area to
So
the
the
east.
question with that is, there's probably not a snowball's chance that Penn Web gets sidewalks on a residential cul-de-sac that's been around for
A long time.
30 years.
Not
necessarily.
Not
They've
necessarily.
done it before. They've done them here in the town, I've seen towns put them in.
Okay.
If we do
I think
get,
we should
I mean,
still
I
do
think
it.
that if you, let's say you're walking from there to go north or south or whatever, and you're walking from the house, having the sidewalk in front of this building would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Even if
I
it
think-
starts
I
from
think we should have
nowhere and
somebody-
goes to Creek Street.
Yeah. Do it.
So, yeah.
okay.
All right, so somebody moved to table pending
No,
those
not to table.
things?
To authorize staff to begin the preparation of an approval resolution with
Right, but
Yeah,
we're
but we do
tabling-
continue to
tabling
table
to-
pending
do
staff creating a Part 2 AF and draft approval resolution.
I'll second.
All right.
Burton, Bastian?
Yes.
Well, I'm just wondering what was the board's thoughts on, the building and the architecture, and do we want to refer it to our consultants? Huh?
That was the staff recommendation, right?
I think it actually fits into that neighborhood pretty nicely. I think it looks good. I think the guy did a nice job on the presentation.
Yeah, very nice
I did have that comment about what looked like stone, but that's my only, if I had any reservation, that would be my only.
I think it was a very thoughtful design. Clearly, he thought about, the declination of the sun and the other elements in the vicinity and trying to draw the eye
He
down
seemed to have
towards the pond.
reasons
Yes.
for everything.
Yes. Yep.
And what I like to see is if somebody has a reason for it
Good
versus
use of glass, good
someone
use
who
of
has no
daylight.
idea they just came up with something, there's no explanation as to why. He had a why. So then all of a sudden you have somebody else that has a different view, and they start,
How well the applicant pays for it.
correct.
I think it's a nice design.
You guys okay with that?
It's up to you.
I know it's up to us.
I just want to make sure that you're all on board with it. And
Yeah, I don't think we need Chris for this one.
Barry? Bob? Bill?
Yeah, good with it.
Okay.
Good?
Shall we vote?
Sure.
Hetzke?
Aye.
Bastian?
Aye.
Burton?
Aye.
Canower?
Aye.
Tidings?
Okay. Water song.
Okay, third one's Water Song.
Can we push them to get that road completed? If we exchange it for,
Through phase 3B,
yeah,
yeah, corner.
I mean, they're not here.
Town
We could
staff
condition
is,
it.
town
We
staff
could.
is requested, or, talked about that, so.
So, before we go there.
We give them their
my
approval, they
question
can get
is,
moving, but we get our road.
with all of this phasing, has the developer performed in accordance with the conditions of approval for the first subdivision and adequate maintenance and cleanup after phasing was completed and,
Have there been issues?
yeah.
And there's one guy's got standing water in his yard. Is that something that's
There is,
common for,
well, no, it's just,
Partially
I
completed.
mean, it's like any subdivision, that there's hiccups here and there, and we've been working with them on trying to resolve some of the drainage issues that have popped up. And, we're continuing to work on it. They haven't necessarily done the one drainage issue that we have a concern with, where the catch basin's higher than the ground, and we requested them to lower it.
How long ago was that?
It was in the spring.
So probably waiting for approvals here so that they can mobilize the site and,
Yeah. Yeah.
but this is not a development that you believe we should be overly conservative with respect to continuing to approve subsequent phases?
No.
Fair enough.
should we
I mean,
ask for
they-
that road to be completed? The whole loop?
What's the benefit?
Highway
Plowing.
department, plowing? I mean, I've already,
Has shared that they have
approved,
concerns. They currently have
created
three
an issue where they
turnarounds where they have to
So
turn
I'm trying
around.
to just gain good graces again.
And
I'm just asking if there's
when they
benefit.
had Homerama there before, it was in its infancy. Now they want to have the show again, so you've got all these staging areas with the display building and.
Yep.
Haven't they had two Homeramas there?
I think so.
Yes, they've had
This
two.
will be the
so-
third,
Like 2 or 3
this will be
years
the
ago?
third
Yeah, so
Homerama.
section 3A, which is sort of along that front end there, was
Right.
the first homerama. The section there that is sort of filled in is the second homerama that was
Okay.
2014,
Okay.
and they're looking to do it basically down. on the front side of the site. Sure.
I don't see.
So
I
would
don't
our
see-
road screw up the?
No.
There's supposed to be a connection to the south here at Sea-Watch Trail too, which was brought up by the fire marshal as, a second point of access to any of these subdivisions.
I don't see why we wouldn't at least ask them.
Right.
Okay.
Like Doug said, the DPW has had concerns with, plowing and, doing 3 dead ends is
Yeah, it's a hassle.
Yeah. Actually 4 dead ends.
4 dead ends, sorry.
Why don't we put it in there, and if there's a,
As a
If there's a
condition.
hardship, they'll let us know.
yeah, I'm thinking they will.
They're gonna
Well,
have to
and they're
do-
looking for quick turnaround from the board to accommodate securing an agreement
Yep.
with the Home Builders Association.
Give you this, you give us that.
Right, and they are in a
And
time
it's a
crunch because
legitimate
of trying to
request. It's not,
pave a road this year.
Yeah, they only have another month.
yeah. That seems reasonable.
Okay. So an EAF is not required because secret was completed with the overall
Before.
subdivision approval in the year 2000. So
Just looking at final subdivision for preliminarily approved project. So do we want to include in the notes on that catch basin to correct that as well?
Absolutely.
That's up to you.
Yes, I think
we should. Yes.
To correct all deficiencies.
Usually when it's higher than the land, it doesn't drain
Request,
too well.
request.
No, it only catches the water that rains on it, so,
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a low volume DI.
yes.
absolutely. We're doing all that other work that doesn't seem
okay.
like that
So
big of a deal.
include a note to correct all deficiencies in previous sections
Correct.
of the subdivision. Okay.
All right. I'll do a motion to approve as our comments.
Okay, for comments.
Hetzke,
Aye.
Bastian,
Aye.
Burton,
Aye.
Canower,
Aye.
Tidings.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. See ya. Yeah. That's right, nice deal, Thanks to you guys, he gets to go home. All right, India Community
Okay.
Center.
So in 2002, they were originally approved for the camp program with 100 people and the construction of cabins. 2004, they expanded the days of the camp program to May and September. The board approved the days of the camp to expand to May and September. In 2016, they made improvements to the cabins with the bunk beds. Department of Health permit allows for up to 120 campers and 144 occupants total. The fire marshal initially had concerns. There is a difference in standards between the Uniform Fire Code and the Uniform Building Code and the Department of Health. At this time, Jeff sent us a letter today, which we haven't been able to include in the drop yet, but we have it in the project folder, where Jeff is comfortable with it at this point. He's comfortable moving forward with the Department of Health standards because it is also reflected in other sections of the Uniform Building Code. While he is not 100% comfortable with the increase in occupancy, it is allowable by Department of Health standards, and he feels comfortable going forward with Department of Health standards.
Okay. Okay. So, what are you guys' thoughts on this?
Well, according to the neighbors, there's a lot of noise that spills off this property. So how do you stop that? How do you enforce it?
Agreed.
with, there's a, how much of a disturbance, you know, what's okay for one person is not okay for another
Right.
person.
Right.
And there's a, you know, there's a legitimate claim that people who live behind Harris Hill have a lot more noise. They have noise there all the time. Across from Town Hall, there's, you know, baseball, there's plays and events going on at the Shell here all the time. And I'm sure that there's people who lived around here before the amphitheater was built. Personally, I don't necessarily dispute any of the guys' claims in terms of, okay, were their kids singing up at, you know, on the roof at 2 in the morning? Probably were.
They're kids.
Correct.
Yeah, kids.
Is it something that, you know, you can bring up individual things and you have, let's say there's 15 examples of situations. Well, 15 examples over how many year period of time is, it's how crazy is it?
I read the complaint. Seems like there was a lot of activity on one complaint, but that was the only complaint that they have on record that they gave us.
And that went back 2 years. It was in 15.
Yes.
And one of the folks that spoke did say that it's improved.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there was some mitigation, you know, after the initial complaints.
So we can always, if there's issues, we can always yank a conditional use permit or go back to, that's why it's a conditional use permit. So if there's, let's say we grant this and, you know, grant the expansion of the conditional use permit for the occupancy and the hours and the, you know, the membership, basically the things that they're asking for. But if there's a issue, we reserve the right to scale it back.
What about a letter from, what about enforcement, Andy's, you know, getting something from Andy Sevegas?
We do have a complaint action summary regarding the complaints that code enforcement has received. I believe that was included in the draw.
It was. That's what I read.
Okay.
But it really wasn't that.
That's what we have in our complaint system from code enforcement.
Yeah, it was Andy who addressed it. I honestly don't have a problem with the request.
I don't
We're
know.
going from 10 to 11 and for the 100 to 150 people. I just want to make sure that if there's going to be 160 or 170, that's what they asked for instead of 150. So
Right.
they're not going to be coming back here asking for more. So if we have a house, 140 for students, and the counselors sleep in the main house, do we need more than 150?
Right.
But it really isn't, have they really shown a need to extend the hours from 10 to 11 p.m.? Are you saying outdoor activities? What kind of outdoor activities do you need an
Well, I don't
extension
know if
from 10 to
there's,
11?
what, was that for outdoor activities
No,
specifically?
it was to
or
be
it was
consistent
for-
with the town.
It's
noise
just
ordinance.
consistent with
the noise
town's
ordinance,
noise
which is 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah. They're just in line with the town's overall.
Oh, okay,
ordinance
okay.
Versus be more restrictive than the town's ordinance.
What if they want like live entertainment up there for the kids at night? That would be acceptable up there? On the conditional use?
That's a good question.
Well, according
think
to the
you-
noise ordinance, it can't spill off the property by more than a few feet, right?
Yeah, 50 feet.
And don't you need that specifically if it's amplified? I don't know.
Staff can check on that.
Yeah.
But the intent right now is not to have outdoor concerts or outdoor entertainment. But if we grant the third
Right.
request where they
They can use it for any
use
other
it for any other,
activity or,
What are all the other things?
right.
yeah, what does that entail? We don't, that's an unknown.
Mhm.
They can't know that, we can't know that. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So one of the comments in the past that has been, was relating to how many people were in the cabins, the split between campers and counselors, and whether counselors would be included under the Department of Health, how they are looked at under the Department of Health regulation, whether the same standards that apply for the children, which is, I
Apply to the
believe, 30
counselors.
square feet per person, applies to adult counselors.
And
So we should ask for clarification from that.
I think that should be a point of clarification.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I read in one of the documents that the counselors slept in the main building.
But at the presentation, I believe it was stated that they would be sleeping
In the cabin.
in the cabins.
Right.
Which is why I
Presentation, right,
think
but I
it
read-
should be a point of clarification.
Yeah.
We should go back and look
I can
at
find that
the
reference.
health department permit that we received as part of this and ensure that they fully comply with the health department standards and clarify what the occupancy use of the buildings is going to be. Does that seem fair?
Peter weigh in
Yeah.
on this?
Pete?
That wouldn't be a bad idea either.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah, I think you should.
Yeah, I think with the questions we have, we would table that until we get answers.
Doug, I just want to
You
make
have
sure this
something?
was in your packet. This was submitted to you. You should
Okay.
have had it. This is just my highlighted copy, but you're welcome to keep it. It just confirms the health department's, that the cabins can have the 144.
Okay.
You have it. I had submitted it to Zach.
Okay, yeah. I think that the clarification came in that it says the children's camp permit for capacities for children only and does not include counselor staff. If the counselors are staying in the bunk houses,
Right, but doesn't she have in there that?
Mike, we probably have it. Can you pull that up? It should be in our folder.
Right, yeah. The next sentence.
The applicant correspondence.
Nope, that wasn't.
I think we have 144 in the cabin.
Approvals,
But we can
cancellations,
continue, we can talk about it tomorrow. I'll submit whatever you need.
Counselor staff for the facility has the ability to house 144 total people in these 6 cabins.
Okay.
So 144 total, whether it's counselors or kids, campers or counselors.
Yeah, and they had stated
144
it would be 114 plus 30.
Yeah, okay.
Which would be 144.
Yeah. Right, 30 counselors, that's the counselors.
It's not the new fuzzy math now.
It's not that new fuzzy. Can't even do that without my calculator. Can't do much more. All right.
How would the board like to proceed?
Let's
Table pending,
let's prepare,
draft
let's start
approval resolution.
preparing a draft approval. I'd like to, I would like Pete to review the whole thing and I want to reserve the right, that, and I want to give the benefit of the doubt, but, you know, it's the whole trust but verify. I don't, if I was the homeowner and I was constantly bombarded with noise, it would drive me crazy. So the question is, has it gotten better, and is it going to continue to get better? And at what point is it considered too much and unacceptable? So they've stated that they want to be good neighbors and they're making changes. You know, put your money where your mouth is, make the changes, and if there's still issues with noise, then we always have the right to rescind those.
What about the lights?
Actually, the lights are a definite potential issue that I haven't looked at them, but that's something that we should have full cutoff, fully shielded fixtures out in an area like that.
Yeah.
So if they're regular wall packs or if they're floodlights that are shining out, that I think should be addressed. Okay. So, yeah, somebody want to move it? It's Mike, yeah.
I'll move to prepare a draft resolution, but we still need to have a review with Peter.
Yeah.
Bobby will have read that.
Okay, we got a second?
I'll second.
Hetzke,
Aye.
Bastian,
Aye.
Canower,
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Good.
Okay. There's 5 items there.
Anything else we got?
No, just a reminder, at this point for November, we don't have any public hearing applications. It'll just be a work session. Bill,
But we're going to be short.
yes.
Quorum.
Bill, try to let us know if you'll be here.
I
'cause we
may or may not
need-
be here 2 weeks from now. I
Okay.
simply don't know.
Okay, and that's,
But that would
as
give
soon as you
people
know.
more time to review.
It'll give people more time to review.
Oh, yeah, it's for this one.
Yes. That will be short, because the person has to recuse himself.
If I don't have to go to Houston, I
Do you
will.
want to officially close the meeting?
Yeah, all right, we will call meeting closed and adjourned and the end of the evening. Thanks, everybody, for sticking around and
All right.
all your work.